98014S9864 in the amount of $255 plus all accrued interest pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 555B8. And M, set public hearing date for consideration of rezoning of farmland from A1 to RR1 for Paul Horton on February 4, 2025 at 9:35 a.m. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make a
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
yes.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 on our agenda is claims. We have a claims figure in the amount of $491,089.67. Do we have a motion to approve claims?
I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. Number 3, consider appointing Mary Lee Vanderpool to the Condemnation Compensation Commission for owner or operator of agricultural property with possible action.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board? I would just say thank you, Mary Lee. With that, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 4, public hearing for Steve Jordanson rezoning from A1 to M1. At this time, I will make a motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into public hearing. Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. We are in public hearing. Good evening, Lindsay.
Okay. Mr. Stephen Jordison, 15906 Ridgemont Drive, Urbandale, Iowa, 50323, is asking to rezone 36.89 net acres of ground from A1 Agricultural District to M1 Light Industrial District for a building to be erected in which precast concrete elements, i.e. concrete wall panels, columns, and beams will be manufactured. In late spring of 2024, Mr. Jordison and a team of about 4 to 5 members came in to meet with the zoning staff, including myself, Miranda Bailey, and Becky Schultz. Don Bowman was also included in that meeting as well. They inquired as to what type of zoning classification would best suit their proposal. We reviewed what they proposed to use the land for and directed them to look for land that was zoned as A1 or M1, or to look for land that was along a highway and preferably off Highway 5 or an interstate, off an interstate interchange that showed M1 proposed for land use on the maps. And we would then have them rezone if the land was not already M1. Mr. Jordison purchased the land known as parcel number 07000190220 in early October. He put in a rezoning application at that time to rezone the land from A1 to M. Before the zoning commission met, and there were multiple members of the public there to voice their concerns. There were members opposed, and some were there as well in support of the application. The zoning commission made a motion to recommend approval of the rezoning request to the Board of Supervisors. There was a second to that motion, and 2 members voted in favor, Hugh Kane and Laura Oliver, and 2 members voted in opposition, Mary Jo Onimus and Sean Westrom, and 1 member abstained, Douglas Rooney, as he works for the engineering firm that prepared documents for Mr. Jordison. When we have a split vote that's 2-2 out of a 5-member board, that motion automatically comes to the Board of Supervisors as a denial. This would not be considered spot zoning, as the 2 parcels to the west of this parcel are M1 zoned, and there is a parcel across the road zoned M1 as well, and I do have that on your map. So the parcel to the directly to the west, that's like a 10-acre piece, and that was zoned to M1 on March 6th of 2018. That's owned by Mr. Hilsebeck, and Mr. Jacoby owns the parcel then directly to the west of that. And that whole parcel is zoned as M1, and he owns a little over 2 acres, and that was done on March 6th, 2018 as well. And both of those had unanimous votes in favor of the rezonings. And then the parcel across the road to the north, that was zoned to M1 on May 21st of 1991, and with a unanimous vote as well. There was a discussion that evening regarding water usage and wastewater, and I know that their representative this evening will be addressing those questions in more detail, and all matters directed to Mr. Jordison have been addressed regarding that, and I know JD is going to address that this evening. The zoning staff recommends that the application, testimony exhibits, and other evidence, as well as the zoning staff report, be accepted into record, and that the Board of Supervisors approve the rezoning of land from A1 to M1. I did submit paper copies of the packet as well as the electronic, because it is a lot of information. We have not received anything new since those packets came out electronically or by paper to you. So everything that you have in front of you is everything that we have received to date. So if you have any questions for me.
On Beacon, it still shows the property closest to the property for tonight's discussion as being agricultural. So I know that in our packet it's M1, but
This
on
is what I just pulled up tonight.
on Beacon, when you look at their assessment,
Oh, it's the tax
Yep.
classification. So the tax classification is different than their zoning. So,
oh,
so
okay.
this parcel right here is what you're referring to, Crystal.
Yep, correct.
Yep, and this parcel is a 10-acre piece out of this 40, and that, but the whole parcel is still taxes as agricultural, but there is a split zoning on that.
Okay,
And this whole parcel is the one that ends in 220, and that is the one that Mr. Jordison wants to rezone, and he wants to rezone the whole thing too. So when that tax classification, and Ryan, you might be able to elaborate on that a little bit, but the tax classification on that would be industrial, because of the whole parcel.
okay.
Yeah.
So when it's partial like that, it's the majority?
There's a discussion on that, because
Okay.
how she has to assess things and how we zone things is
Is different.
It's two
Okay.
different things. So that is confusing, because when people do pull up a parcel report, they see classification, and that is the tax classification. So then that's when we have to go to the zoning map and see that it is zoned as, so it is zoned,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other questions for our zoning director? Okay. Who would like to,
Did we go into?
we're already in public.
We did? Okay.
Yeah, who would like to start?
Do you want the applicant to come forward and do their presentation?
That would be great. Let's start with that.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is J.D. Dalton with the Dalton Law Firm at 2521 128th Street in Urbandale, Iowa. And I will, in the interest of time, I will be the only individual speaking on behalf of the applicant, Steve Jordison. I intend to break down my presentation into 3 parts tonight. I'd like to introduce you to the business Mr. Jordison would like to bring to your county, the people and family behind that business, and then get into the very specific site details regarding the zoning subject matter that we're voting on tonight, or that you're voting on tonight. I was not at the planning and zoning hearing, but I did review draft minutes of that meeting, and I've also reviewed the public comment and public input. Is everyone in attendance able to hear me back there? Yes? Okay. And so as part of my presentation, I want to address those concerns and cover them at a very high level at this point. I have a fairly large amount of content to try to cover there. With the chairman's approval, I'd like to reserve about 10 minutes. Is that acceptable? Normally I would say 5, but I really want to address those public comments because I think it'll give you a lot more insight on where we're at.
That's fine. Thank
Is
you.
that okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so the business. Mr. Jordison is prepared to make an investment of capital in up to $10 million in excess of $10 million to get this manufacturing facility off the ground. The total land purchase already is $600,000. The building he anticipates building on this site would be $4.4 million. At launch, he anticipates 10 to 15 employees. At maturity of this business, he would expect there to be about 40 to 50. The staff that we're looking for, one of the reasons why Warren County was on our radar, are people that want to run equipment and build stuff. So we're looking for welders, skilled tradesmen, farmers that are looking for off-farm income sources, and office staff as well. This would be a completely contained operation for Steve in Warren County. The product's focus is going to be on precast wall panels. I'll show you what those actually look like. The idea is this site will generate product that would be shipped to central Iowa, down to Kansas City, and to Omaha. The inputs going into this site are going to be rock, sand, cement, and water. That rock right there is a refined limestone. It's cleaner than what's on your secondary roads, but it's basically limestone. Then sand and cement. Cement is essentially a combination of limestone and clay that's processed through a kiln. It's a very fine powder. That actually goes into specialized transport equipment to get to our facility, and then it goes into a silo. That's 100% contained, because if it comes in contact with moisture, it starts the chemical reaction that hardens and makes concrete. The output of this thing is going to look like this. This is an example of an architectural panel. My only point in this slide is to show you we basically have earth going into this site and molded earth going out of it. Some people might have the wrong impression that this is a full production concrete plant. I represent a lot of concrete producers. I know that business as well, and I'm going to give you a contrast between the two. A good concrete plant in Iowa on a good day is going to produce 1,000 cubic yards of production. That's going to consume about 30,000 gallons of water, which everybody in here has probably seen a ready-mix truck before. That's about 100 loads of ready-mix. Jordison Manufacturing, in comparison, is going to, on a good day, consume about 100 cubic yards of production, which is 3,000 gallons of water, daily equivalent of about 10 loads. So while someone would say, well, a lawn tractor is the same thing as a field tractor, this is kind of the similarities. I mean, they both have an engine and tires, but they're two totally different animals. This operation is much more of the light end of light industrial. I thought it'd be helpful just to show, this is basically the steps that we're going to go through to make these panels. From engineering, preparing the forms, pouring the concrete, and then delivering it to a job site. And if I may, I'm going to show you just a quick 1-minute video, and I'll walk you through what this actually looks like. So engineering plans come in, our engineers will review it. It'll go to steel fabrication to prepare the reinforcement. Here you have workers preparing the steel on the casting tables to get ready for the concrete to be poured. There can also be insulation put in those panels for thermal properties. These are weigh belts that are moving the dry materials into a skip hoist. That's part of the quality control. You notice, pay attention to the amount of dust you're going to see on these. These sites are contained. The dust is controlled at the source. This is product quality control doing compression testing. This would be a similar test that's done on job sites all around central Iowa. This is a slump test. This is measuring the workability of the concrete. So concrete's getting tested, verifying its validity. It goes into a bucket that's basically going to load it right on the casting tables. The workers trowel it in. This is the same type of mix you're going to see anywhere in the county where someone's pouring concrete, whether it's for a barn or a school or anything in between. There's an example of the mixer actually unloading on the casting tray. Once the concrete starts to harden, a cover usually will go over it to help cure it, make it hard. At this point, the concrete forms are being stripped off the side and the final panels are on the table. Once they're ready for transport, they'll get loaded with an overhead crane, loaded onto the back of semis, and taken to job sites. And once they're at a job site, everybody in here has probably seen something like this. The speed and efficiency of a job site going up really quickly. So that's, in a nutshell, the business. Now we're going to focus on the people. So who's coming into Warren County if you approve this? Steve Jordison is the founder of this company. It's an incredible Iowa success story. The man started with a truck and a lot of grit and faith in 1975, and now he's got 3 generations of his family working with him. This year they'll celebrate 50 years, which is an incredible feat itself. Now it's grown into one of the oldest and largest concrete contractors in central Iowa. He's got a little over 100 full-time employees at Jordison, and between his other companies that I'm also associated and representing him on, he's got over 200 full-time affiliated. They focus on everything from footings, floors, parking lots, and tilt-up. So if we had enough time, we could take a survey. I could almost guarantee you someone in here has walked on concrete Steve Jordison had something to do with, whether it's your schools, restaurants, car washes. He's also got a large trucking fleet that he operates out of a couple other locations that manage material shipments and logistics, and he's also in ready-mix production. That's a lot of what I do with him as well. He owns facilities in Des Moines, Grimes, Van Meter, and so I just wanted you to know that you're dealing with someone who's already a proven commodity. This isn't an unknown for this guy. He's just not a new startup. He's been around for a long time. He's done the heavy lifting stuff that's 10 times more capacity. And these are examples of projects he's worked on. Okay, so again, I'm moving really quick. I will have a summary page at the end of this, but we've covered our business, the people. Now let's get into the specifics of the site. As Lindsay indicated, this is approximately a 40-acre piece right off of the 35 G50 exit. So to kind of familiarize where we're at, St. Charles would be off to the west there. To the east, you'd be going into St. Mary's. I want to take you quickly through the site view. So this would be the ground level view, street view, looking west towards St. Charles off the off-ramp. This would be looking east on G50 now, approaching the site. The first site to the north would be Martin's Building. That's the first one that was rezoned M1 Light Industrial in 1991. Across the street from him is Jacoby's Auto Business. That's also a light industrial site. Move a little bit farther. In the bottom right-hand corner, I've indicated each property, what you're looking at. That's the Stark residence. Their view across the street is looking into Hilsebeck's property, which is also a light industrial. 2017, you would have seen a temporary batch plant being operated out of there with heavy equipment and trucks running out of that site. This is, I want to give you a snapshot of the eastbound traffic, the visibility at the top of the hill. I don't know if you can see the windmill kind of at the top of the lane up there. That's very close to where the approach is right now, so you can see the visibility on the road. Here's the Keeney's residence. Their view across the street is basically split between the Hilsebeck property and Jordison's. Now you have the Pontier residence. There's actually two here. You have a two-story farmhouse that looks like it was built in 1900 according to the county records. And if you look off to the distance in the back, there's a second one-story resident that's back there. Their view across the street looks directly into the Jordison site, and that's what that looks like at the moment. So now I'm going to show you some preliminary site concepts. These are our good faith illustrations of what we believe the site will in general look like. Tonight you're only voting on the actual rezoning. This isn't a site plan approval, but we did want to show you what the site will likely look like. These illustrations, this part of the illustration is really hard to see on a screen, but you can see we're showing a concrete entrance coming off of G50. And then actually since P&Z, part of the input I could see from neighbors to the east that are actually located a little bit higher in the air. They're concerned about the placement of that building. We've actually reoriented the building to run east-west versus north-south. Okay, this is essentially a bird's eye view of the site. The software that generates this doesn't do a great job of showing ag, but to the extent we're not using in the site, as we're building it out, we plan to continue to let it go to row crop. We would be putting a berm along the north elevation to try to provide screening and windbreak. Along the east elevation, that one, there's already a lot of change in topography there, so some of the road is already well below where our site is, and some of it's above it. So on the east side, which is the left side of your picture there, we would still try to achieve the same type of berming, but the primary focus is going to be on that north end. Here's what it would look like from the road coming in. Mr. Jordison is prepared to put a concrete approach in there, 30 feet wide, 100 feet in, and about 8 inches thick. That will mitigate any fugitive dust or dust of truck traffic coming in and out of his site. I would note that I think the Pontiers are the only other ones on this stretch of road that actually have a paved entrance. Everybody else has got a limestone road. Mr. Jordison, again, would be trying to help address the fugitive dust coming off of his site. Here's what the building is approximately going to look like. Again, a 40,000 square foot precast building with steel framing members. Okay, now this here, I want to come back to this. So this is the most immediate neighbor looking into our site. With a berm on the site, it's going to look more like this. Okay, so when we're talking, at the end of it, I will address all the concerns the neighbors had. I'll do my best to do that. But the visual impact you're talking going from this, to something like this. And wherever that approach goes, we'll coordinate, obviously, with the county engineering department to make sure that it's put where they want it, but that's the view there. Here's your view to the east. So coming out of the site, looking to the east, this is going to be the visibility that they would have of our trucks getting onto G50. Okay, so really quickly, how do we get to this site? It's I-35 proximity. Looking for work ethic of strong people that would be interested in working for a company like this. We're looking for a pro-business client. County, and the biggest thing, which Lindsay pointed out on the zoning, is the 20-year plans. To anyone who is not familiar with the comp plans, those are huge, because when we look to go to any area, you want to look at the comp plans, because that's where the county or the city is telling you, these are the uses we want in these locations. If you bring a use in that's not consistent with that comp plan, you have a major uphill battle. So part of what we looked at here was, what's the comp plan saying, then what's the current use? Lindsay already touched on this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but you can already see all the pink M1 that's already right there. This fits with what the neighborhood already has in it. These are the comp plans. So 2002 to 2024, here's your comp plan showing light industrial and highway commercial right in the area that I circled in blue. The next 20 years of planning is putting in the same location. And to show you, this is consistent with all the neighboring counties do as well. All those red dots, if you can picture each one of those in your mind's eye, there's industrial and commercial at each one of those interchanges. We have property at several of them. And if you picture each one of those off the DeSoto exit, the Van Meter exit, the Cumming exit, even off of Bevington, you're going to see the counties are putting this type of use in these locations. And from a planning perspective, the question is why? Why would you want any industry at all? If you're a farm-centric, you're focused on preserving ag land, why would you want industry at all? Well, if you look at this map, this diagram, this is taken from your current comp plan, and it shows that about 78% of your total land acres, the bottom in blue, this county has 339,000 of total available acres. Right now, about 80% of it, the green, is agricultural. The purple, that's your residences, that's about 20%. If you take that 80 and 20 together, almost 100% of your taxable base is between ag and family, or I'm sorry, residential. Down at the bottom, the two that can help you with those tax revenues are commercial and industry. And right now, industry is only 0.04, or as a quotient, that's 0.0004. What we're proposing is, why would you want to look at this industry? It's because it's very powerful. If Steve were to put $1 million residence on this property, the state rollback right now is 46%. So the taxable value that the levy would be against is $460,000. If he puts, and again, we're not agreeing to a pre-assessment tonight. We'll be fair with whatever the assessor does here. But let's say he puts a $4.4 million building up, and the assessment comes in between land and the building at $1 million. Now that's probably low, but let's use that. The tax rollback on that is 90%. So the taxable value is $900,000. So comparing it to rural residential to industrial, that's a big factor. Now let's compare it to ag land. If he leaves it as a 40-acre parcel, his tax bill is about $1,000 a year. If he converts it to the industrial, it's going to be approximately $50,000. And that's, again, a good faith estimate of that. So this is very important. The single project could generate the equivalent of 2,000 acres of agricultural tax. That's why county planners look at these areas and they say, well, we don't want it creeping and taking over the whole county. Obviously, we don't want it to be a significant impact. But where's the lowest impact place to put this type of use? It's right along those interstate interchanges. And again, so you can see the high impact on job creation and tax revenues. Now let's look at what the impact is from a fire, because you can really distill most of the community concerns around fire emergency services, traffic, road maintenance, water, and air quality. So I'm going to move really quickly through those, and then I have a summary page, and then I'll turn it over to the public. So this building is going to be subject to the International Fire Code, International Building Code that the state has adopted. I've already gone through with the State Fire Marshal's Office to do the code analysis. This, out of the three possible classifications for this type of a building in industrial, H1 is highest hazard, F1 is moderate hazard. This one's going to be classified as F2, the low hazard. The reason why is because it's constructed of concrete walls and steel, and its occupancy is going to be manufacture of non-combustible concrete products. So the lowest possible risk you can have, we're going to have it. I will also say we work very closely with volunteer fire departments. We have people on our staff that are volunteer firefighters, and part of our onboarding process is to reach out to local departments, let them do a site visit, and we'll coordinate with them on any emergency services. I can tell you in the 20 years that I've worked with Steve and his operation, we've never had a major catastrophe of any kind. We've never had any kind of fire or environmental issues whatsoever. On the bigger operations, not even light industrial. Okay, traffic and road impact. 99.9% of our inbound and outbound traffic is going to be on I-35. I did see there was a lot of resistance from St. Charles community, because I think there was a major concern that this was going to be traffic going through St. Charles to go to a quarry. We've reached out to that quarry. They can't furnish the quality of limestone that we need at this site. So our traffic, even bringing materials in, is going to be running north and south. In total transparency, if this gets approved, we will likely use some limestone from the quarry west of St. Charles just for building subgrade. You know, it's what would go under the footing. So you're not talking day in and day out traffic. It's basically what you need to basically put subgrade under the building. And we would like to use a local supplier for that. But in terms of the day in and day out operation of this thing, once it's going, we're going north and south off I-35. G50 is a big deal. So G50, if you look at where our approach would be, it's likely 1,250 feet of G50 to get back on I-35. G50, as everyone probably recognizes, is a farm-to-market road, which means the county is looking to state and federal funding from the road use tax, which is your gas tax and vehicle registrations. We already talked about the visibility. We'll place it where the county engineer wants it. No bridges of Warren County will be impacted with this site. And G50 is designed for the legal load sizes. There's a lot of concern, and so I want to just kind of comment on this. Legal load sizes in Iowa, if Fairway's delivering groceries to any of your stores, the legal load size total weight is 80,000 pounds. If someone wants to haul 100,000 pounds or 200,000 pounds, they can still get it legal, and it has to be a permit, but it's on the basis of axle weight. So whatever load sizes we're going to have coming out of this site, it's going to be on the basis of carrying out the lawful axle ratios to those weights. Most of our shipments that we anticipate aren't going to have a weight issue because a lot of the concrete panels will have insulation in it to basically create a thermal break for those walls. If we're going to have a permit issue, it's going to be because of size, length and width, not weight. And again, when you look at how our roads are designed in Iowa, they're designed for that lawful load traffic. So if you think of the Cumming exit now with that Hy-Vee distribution center there, those trucks coming in there, most of them are going to weigh more than ours, just in terms of their initial bulk weight coming in at approximately loaded to 80,000 pounds. Okay, so now let's talk about the traffic count. So G50, the last traffic survey, average daily traffic count, each one of those dots in that big yellow box represents a vehicle. So that's 1,090 vehicles. The last survey done in 2016, Iowa didn't update it in 2020 because of COVID. If you look at what Jordison's projecting to add 20 to 25 trucks a day, that's the little yellow down there below. And then I-35, I don't know that anyone's really concerned about I-35, but their last traffic count was 19,000. So again, very minor increase in what's already on G50. Water consumption was a big concern at the last meeting. So one of the things, in very simple terms, a garden hose could supply the daily water requirement for what Steve needs. We did reach out to Warren Water District, and we paid for a hydraulics study, which is what we've done at other locations with bigger consumption. Their engineers have approved a 1-inch meter pit connection. Here's actually a copy of the letter that was addressed to Jordison. I'll just read it. The letter is regarding his parcel. Warren Water District's engineers have completed a hydraulics study and approved the parcel for a 1-inch meter pit connection. Please let you know if you have any other questions. Most of us are going to be connected on a 3/4 inch water connection. Now, in total transparency to the community of the neighbors that are around this area, I did ask what impact may this have on pressure, because pressure, you know, you're looking at volume and you're looking at pressure. Right now, this service area gets about 47 PSI. If at peak hours, which is going to be morning and evenings and weekends, if they're on peak consumption and we were running our 1-inch meter line at full blast, there'd be about a 10 PSI drop in pressure, which would not work for us. So the workaround that is to have timers that will charge or load a storage tank inside our facility, where we'll load it during the nighttime hours, and then during peak hours, we're going to be drawing from that anyway. We've done something very similar with a ready mix plant in Norwalk, where we couldn't get the water we needed there on Xenia, so we do an overnight filling a storage tank, and it's had zero effect on the neighbors. And there's actually a big development to the north that's far more significant than anything we would have here. So again, water is essentially a neutral impact. Another question, so I wanted to point out too, so to fill that tank, we're talking about running our water for 45 to 60 minutes, and that's what we're going to need for 1 day of production. So we might set a timer from 1 o'clock till 2 in the morning, and we have what we need for the next day. Water treatment was another concern. So sanitary water on this will be an Iowa DNR permitted septic system, and the processed water on here will be 100% contained on site and recycled. The issue with processed water from a ready mix, any kind of ready mix production, is primarily pH level. So in a contained site, what will happen, this is very similar to what we have on ready mix sites. The processed water for, let's say, clean out of that mixing drum or a clean out of any tools will go into a containment pit. The fines or the particulate will settle to the bottom. We will be able to pump that out, take it to one of our other recycle yards where that is actually dried and sold as specialty backfills. So a lot of us have houses where they put that under garage floors and other backfill. And the water itself, between rainwater, the acidity of rainwater hitting it, will help neutralize it, and then we'll have tablets we can put in there, filter the water, and then we can also reprocess that in there. So there'll be zero water that we're generating that's going to be allowed or to go off-site anywhere. Air quality, so let's talk about air quality. So first thing we're going to do is pave that entrance off the G50. So truck traffic coming in and out, unlike a neighbor that's going to be, coming in and out of a property on limestone, we're going to have pavement right off of G50. We'll use asphalt millings on the site to also, the rest of the traffic getting in the site, we'll have them on millings. We'll put a privacy berm around the north parcel line. Oh, okay, on bulk material storage, this is something, again, the county doesn't even require. We do this in the city of Des Moines. We'll put 3-sided bulk storage material for the sand and the rock. So if we go back to looking at those inputs, cement's gonna be in a silo, sand and rock will be in a 3-sided enclosure. And then at the, this is very important. A lot of the neighbors are concerned that, they're probably 400 feet away from us. Under the industrial requirements, we have to contain the dust at the site, the source of generating that dust. The actionable level under OSHA for dust containment is 25 micrograms per cubic meter. That's so small, your naked eye can't even see it. It's about as small as a single strand of bacteria, and that's what we have to contain at the site. So when you're seeing those guys working in that before, where they didn't have big dust masks and stuff, it's because it's being contained at the source of origination. So if we're containing it there, the only thing that you have to deal with coming off site is fugitive dust, is road traffic, and that's why we're going to address that with asphalt millings and the concrete entrance. Another part of this is we're manufacturing. We're using our labor efficiently to manufacture. There's not a lot of cutting and grinding involved. Sorry, my points are jumping around. We got the landscaping print. And then shielded outdoor lighting solutions to mitigate any lighting coming out, and then setbacks that substantially exceed the county ordinance. Okay, as for the rural charm, the comp plan encompasses rural charm. The comp plan is going to already take into consideration where it wants to put that light industrial. The neighbors already have it around them. They're bordered by 20th Avenue, which is going to generate far more dust than we're going to generate ever off of our site. Proximity to noises coming off of G50 and I-35 is already there. The harvesting, field spraying activities, and then just the proven track record. I can stand here with confidence because I've worked for 2 decades with him, and I can tell you on much more intensive sites, we do a good job. We take it serious, and he's got a whole team behind him. Environmental people, industrial hygienists. I help with the legal side. We have health and safety compliance people. It's a great team. The last point on this piece of it is he's doing it 100% self-funded. A lot of projects I'll do with other companies that Steve's affiliated with, counties will give us some taxpayer funding for tax abatement issues, tax incentive. He's not asking for any of that. It's 100%. He's funding it on his own, which is the way, as a county, I think we would be interested in that. And he's not asking the county to change any of its comp plans. So if we look through this real quick, and then I'm done. How am I doing on time here? Am I way over?
You're okay.
And again, I apologize. I didn't want to miss any of these points. If you look at this, I would say you're looking at a non-hazardous manufacturer, major capital investment, job creation, increased tax revenues, zoning staff recommended. I'm putting a yellow on neutral for planning and zoning, so you got 2 and 4, 2 against it. Conformity with your past and current mapping. It's consistent with how your neighboring parcels have done it. We covered the water, we covered the dust. It's got the existing infrastructure. We're not in a floodplain. We don't have to deal with any off-site parking issues. The biggest negative on here that we just can't do anything about is that you are going to have neighbors that are not going to want their views to change and their neighborhood to change, and I understand that. But I can tell you is we work as closely and as cordially as we can with all of our neighbors. In Des Moines, we have dense residential apartment buildings right next to us, and we get along fine. There's issues that come up from time to time, but we try to be reasonable with people. That is the one. In fairness, I'm putting in an orange or a red on it for opposition. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would yield to you to take the next step. What I'll do, just so the public knows, I will take notes as everyone's speaking. You don't have to turn and address me. I will take notes on everything you're asking. And then if the chairman gives me time to come back at the end, I can potentially tie up any loose ends that I left, and then obviously take questions from the board as well.
Thank you. That sounds like a good plan.
Actually, I've got a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, on the fire hazard, are you going to have to sprinkle this building?
No, it's
Okay.
not going to have to be required.
And then on the length of the trucks, so 70 foot in the state of Iowa is legal length. Do you know what your trucks usually are?
Well, these trucks, most of these panels are probably going to be, what do you say, Steve, 20 feet, 20, 30 feet?
Most of them would be 35 feet, 40-footer, 45 feet would be the max.
Yeah.
I mean, they will go on a regular trailer that fits behind the tractor.
So you're talking a 53-foot trailer, so you're not going to have to, so permitting the ingress and egress off of interstate onto interstate, you've talked about a 30-foot wide by 100-foot ingress to your property. Is 30 foot going to be adequate? Can you make that corner on a 53-foot trailer?
Most panels are less than 12 feet wide
Okay.
and less than 40 feet long.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what we have at 2 other locations with semi-traffic, cement trucks coming in to deliver cement with ready-mix trucks coming out. That's where he got that from.
And then just doing some quick math, 47 gallon a minute out of a 1-inch metered connection. So you're approximating you're going to run an hour to an hour and a half at night to fill up a 3,000 gallon tank.
Yeah, it's actually with a 1-inch, you get about 75 gallons per minute. So that's where if you do the math on that, you're going to get between 3,000 and 5,000 in that 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
A three-quarter in Warren Water District, you're at about 35 gallons per minute. A 1-inch is going to get you to 75. And just to put that in perspective, Warren Water pumps about 1,000,007 gallons every day. And so when they do their hydraulic calculations, we lean heavily on those. We did the same exercise with Xenia when we needed much more water consumption. Did that help, Mr. DeWitt?
Yeah.
For there.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
What's the purpose of maintaining the row crop acres? You said you had,
Well, if we're not using it, we'll have a farmer come use it. I mean, if we have 15, 20 acres there that someone wants to put to hay while we're not using it, we would let them use it.
okay. So ideally, you don't need the entire 40 acres. How many acres?
Well,
would you
so the production will be taking place inside that facility, but there will be outside storage. So we could have panels that we need someplace for trucks to back up and haul something until the rest of the panels are ready to go to a job, which is exactly what your county ordinance requires. Your county ordinance requires the manufacturing part of the operation to be inside, but there can be outside storage. If you look at like any of the other precast companies around Central Iowa, they have something similar. They're going to have a yard where stuff's parked outside, and then they're going to have their, the business end of it being done inside.
So what would be the minimum size acreage that you would need to put it down a facility like this? Like
Well,
acres, 12
Well,
acres?
we would hope, our hope is that this thing would grow. I mean, we want to start with the 40,000 square foot and then reserving adequate turn radiuses for truck traffic and storage of the panels. And then over time, if it grows, again, that's the hope, is that we would be utilizing most of that site.
Okay,
Are you
thank
forecasting any outside cranes or overhead cranes or anything like that?
At this point, right now, historically what we've done is we've done tilt-up with third parties' cranes. So they're bringing cranes to the job site. I don't know that that's part of the initial launches, bringing any, you have any plans for acquiring cranes right away, or are you going to use third parties for those? Yeah, third parties for the cranes. So right now, where this fits in his whole operation is he's already doing tilt-up on a job site. Tilt-up's where you pour it, you form it right on the job, and then you just tilt it up. This one here goes to the manufacturing step of more efficient use of labor. And so it's where you're actually generating it. You're in a controlled environment, so you can do it year-round. When you think about Iowa, you're trying to do a tilt-up where someone's on a rapid schedule, you're shut down right now with the weather we've got. Whereas, with an operation like this, it could be inside and keeping those workers busy through the winter.
I guess in my mind, you look at the one in Bondurant. I'm sure you're both familiar with that one. That one started as a smaller plant, and eventually they got outdoor trolley cranes and everything. I guess I don't want to approve this, and then in 2 years you're coming back and asking for M2 because you want outside.
No, so if you
Functions.
look at, yeah, that's a good question. The zoning ordinance for M1 basically defines the light industrial uses that we're applying for. And so if whatever activity we're going to do is going to be consistent with that ordinance. So in a year, if we're doing outdoor storage, that still would be consistent with the M1. M2 is going to be a much more intensive use, which is spelled out in that next part of your ordinance. And I'm glad you brought up Bondurant. So I did look through some of the comments. I think some public had gone there and taken pictures of the Bondurant. That's the one right off of Hubble. What's interesting about that is, that's a perfect example where most industrial sites are not requiring berms. Had that site had the same thing we're proposing, you wouldn't have seen anything. You might have seen the top of the building and the silo in the back, but in terms of the visual impact, that's what we're doing to try to mitigate that.
Well, and I'm very familiar with Boonville Road and the berms that they've put on there for manats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you hardly notice that there's
Yeah.
a rock quarry back in there, a sand pit,
Yeah.
you know.
And what's interesting here, in fairness to Jordison, is a lot of times we'll wait for a county or city to initiate those, to say, hey, we want berms or we want landscaping. Here, we just said, let's, he just came right out the gate and said, I'm funding this with my own money. I don't need the county's money. I want to be an overall substantial net positive, and we'll even deal with the cost of putting berms in ourselves.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Dalton at this moment? Okay, we are in public hearing. Thank you, sir. We're going to limit comments to 3 minutes. Please come up, speak loudly into the mic, state your name, your address, and we will hear you.
Jeff Pontier, 1797 and 1781 G50 Highway. The farmhouse, the 1909 farmhouse, and the 2022 brick house. We own the 40 acres, my wife and I do, right across the road from this, and we do not want it. I am around construction businesses all the time. I'm the one that brought up the precast place out in Bonnarant that Corel owns. You saw the videos, I assume, if they downloaded them and showed them to you, that I brought to planning and zoning, and the pictures. The dust wouldn't have mattered if there was a 45-foot wall over that. They do have berms. They don't take care of them. I doubt these would be taken care of. The plans, when you show them, look great, but in reality, they don't come out that way. Fire hazards, let's go back to October of 2024. Go up to Minnesota, see what that precast plant happened to it. Did they have sprinkler systems? I don't know. Do we have the emergency services to take care of all this? I don't think so. That hill over to the east of us, one of the most dangerous hills on G50. I have witnessed tractors getting hit by cars there. I have not been hit myself. It is a very dangerous hill. So trucks. Over width in the state of Iowa is 102 inches. I believe these are probably going to exceed that. So everything coming out of there is going to be an over width load. Over width loads with the tractors, even with your dump trucks being loaded up with sand and stuff, going to tear that road up. I know. I've seen what 8, 12, and 14-inch concrete happens when you bring in heavy loads. I can take you to a place. The dust, again, you put up a berm, what happens when that south wind hits us? We're going to see that all summer long. Concrete comes in those bulk tanks, it's going to be blown off. It is not 100% contained. I don't care what they say. It is not. Take a trip down to the concrete plants here in Des Moines and see it. Monarch Cement for one. Now look at the equipment. If concrete dust doesn't hurt stuff, look at the equipment down there. It is a 1/4 inch thick in places. It does not wash off. That's going to be directly on my house at 1781 and 1797. I'll be breathing this all summer long. When you put a berm up, it's going to swirl all that. It's going to take it 25 feet in the air, and it's going to land right over on me. Is Mr. Jordanson's company going to be over there to power wash my facility and repaint it every couple months? I don't think so. I think he's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. I think this plant belongs on Ridgemont Drive in Urbandale. That'd be the perfect place for it.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Mike McAwee. I live at 3346 G50 Highway, which is to the east of this site. I noticed during the presentation, they brought up the charm factor of this area. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of idea of our charm we have there. Exit 52 is the only exit that I've seen in Warren County with a blue tourism sign. It's the gateway to the covered bridges, the Imes Bridge in St. Charles, the Madison County Winery to the west, It's called the Avenue of the Saints. Very unique with two towns named for it, St. Mary's, St. Charles. Just to the west is the Hinterland Grounds, which brings in thousands of people every year. I've heard from many of the attendees talking about how great our area is, and they didn't know that it existed. We have 3 wedding venues, one just to the east, another one in north of St. Mary's, and another one going north of St. Mary's. That's why people come to this area, to get married and have their celebrations there. We have Ragbride that comes through there very frequently. I talked with people from Europe, from Georgia. They all told us how beautiful and lucky we were to have this area. They said that it was kind of magical. I kind of laughed and thought maybe they'd been drinking too much, but when you think about it, it is a magical little area. They said they thought it only existed in books and movies, that it was their favorite leg of the ride. I know that the county is looking for tax revenue. We have exit 43 to the south, 56 to the north, and 65, which are already very heavy industrial. Be a perfect place for this. Very little housing. We do have an undersized water system. We do not have natural gas on that stretch of road. I'm sure they'll have to have external propane tanks, trucks bringing that in. I guess to wrap it up, we don't have many areas left like this in the county or the state. We'd just like to keep this as a magical little area. I just think that people from all over the country are just always so surprised when they see how nice it is. Let's keep it for our music festivals, our weddings, bike rides, the residents who keep their houses up very nice along here. In fact, I see the county, the guy mowing the ditches has nothing to do along our road because everybody mows the sides of the road. So it's kept up very nice. We'd like to keep the charm if we could. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Hi there, my name is Amanda Croxton. I live at 16533 20th Avenue, just adjacent to the proposed rezoning, and I, like many others here, am opposed to this. I'm a physician, so I look through the lens of health and safety, and so that's what I want to primarily talk about tonight. The biggest issues that I see are that we do have volunteer EMS workers in St. Charles and St. Mary's, so that includes our Madison County to the side of us as well. And these workers are already doing a tremendous amount for our population. At maximum capacity, he's talking about increasing the population size by 10% of what's already there, of people that are gonna need to be taken care of during the day. There's not a hospital in Warren County, and the closest hospital is 30 minutes away. In addition, he's adding industrial infrastructure, so there's a higher risk of injury just by the nature of the work that is going to be at this plant, be it a cement plant or any other industrial plant that gets put in this area once it's rezoned. So the risk to the individual citizens of the community that require those services and the individuals that work in this facility is also significantly higher with not as much turnaround. You can talk to the current EMS workers and they'll tell you that after the Hy-Vee plant was put up the road and other industrials in the adjacent cities, there's already an increase in accidents because of the increased trucking that's happening. So when we additionally add 18 or plus large trucks on this road every day, we're going to increase the number of potential catastrophes. Additionally, we've talked to the DOT who said, no, that exit is not up to code, and it was built when the highway was built, and there's no reason to upgrade that at this point. The only thing that would encourage them to upgrade that is once we meet the number of accidents and deaths that would meet a threshold to say, okay, this is enough, we need to change this. We've come up with a great plan as Warren County to look at the proactive future of saying we should put industrial here, we should put residents here so that we can make those plans thinking about the safety of individuals. So I beg you not to have this be a situation where 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm coming and sitting and telling you about my family members that have died because of the risk of putting in this plant without thinking about making changes to the infrastructure beforehand. This is not something that we need to do after the fact. I think that this absolutely is a great idea for Warren County. That doesn't mean it's a great idea for exit 52. And just because it's close to an exit doesn't mean that it's the right thing. If you look at those Warren County maps, We can see that industrial is close to exits, so is residential, so is agricultural. Everything's close to an exit because that's the way we get places. So that doesn't mean that just because it's a possibility, it's the right thing for our exit. Not every exit is the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger Stahlheim, 3543 G50 Highway, just down the road. His architectural drawing showed a 3,500 pound pickup, which is a joke. Last time we met, Jorgensen said that there would be up to 25 trucks. He was not talking about 3,500 pound pickups. He was talking about these kind of trucks. I'm a commercial underwriter, have been for a commercial department in Des Moines. And he's talking about trucks like this. They're hauling, he's got to have the 3 ingredients, and these are hauling cement. I actually took this up towards Bondurant. 80,000 pounds is what these things are carry or weigh. 60 to 80,000 pound dump trucks bringing the other materials to be brought in. The U.S. Army tank weighs 40 to 50 tons. These are 40-ton trucks. I was in the Midwest concrete plant a couple of times in Bondurant. Note, 80,000 pound is 40 tons each. So the 3 trucks with the 3 materials are going to be 120 tons on the same piece of concrete. I entered on Google, are secondary roads built to the same weight carrying capacity as an interstate? The answer is a resounding no. Tests have shown, this is a study, tests have been shown that a single unit semi, fully loaded 80,000 pound truck can cause payment damage equivalent to that caused by 6,000 automobiles. This illustrates why carefully made estimates of expected traffic are critical to proper payment design. 6,000 vehicles, so I observed 3 of these trucks. He's got to have the 3 ingredients. That is 18,000 vehicles in 1 hour. This roadway is also used as an emergency route in case of shutdown in the interstate. And I have observed at least once we had that in the last several years. This was the case, and our road was front to back of semis intermixed with cars on top of what he's trying to do. This is also the roadway for Hinterland Entertainment. Over 35,000 people were here, and they're building a new stadium that's closer to the interstate, which is going to increase the traffic. The number will go from 40,000 people or more as they park just next to this land. Not only vehicles, but people. People are already being mixed with traffic. This is flesh and blood people being mixed with 80,000 pound trucks, or 3 times that amount. Our children and our grandchildren are playing next to our houses. This is our homeland, and you're trying to mix trucks in with their children. Don't you have a heart? Good grief. It's terrible. It is already dangerous for people. Children should not be playing around multiple 80,000 pound trucks.
Thank you,
this
sir.
roadway,
Sir.
I know, shut up.
No. That's not how this works. Your time is up. Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Jackie Morris. I live at 17380 R45 Highway. I'm also in opposition of Mr. Jordison having this plant and the board approving this from being zoned from A1 to M1. The reasons are in the Code of Ordinances, in the required conditions, my opinion is that his operation does not meet the required conditions in the Code of Ordinances. The reasons so it says, all uses shall be conducted wholly within a completed enclosed building, except for parking, loading, and unloading. At the planning and zoning meeting, Mr. Jordison told the group that there would be multiple operations going on outside. Not everything would be able to take place in his 40,000 square foot building, so that right there does not meet the required condition. The second required condition in our Code of Ordinances is no use shall be permitted to be established, which by its manner of operation is or may become hazardous, noxious, or offensive owing to the emission of odor, dust, noise, vibration, or water carried waste. in precast manufacturing, there's processed water runoff, which I know he addressed, but if there's any type of leakage, there's all the form oils, which he did not mention. The form oils prevent the concrete from sticking to the forms. There's also muriatic acid, which is used to clean off the forms and any rebar so that it can be reused in other processes. And if any of that leaches out, muriatic acid decreases soil pH, it implants plant growth. If it gets into the airs, it's a respiratory hazard, causes eye irritation. So none of that was even acknowledged by the Jordison team. And then finally, to address the noise, the World Health Organization considers noise pollution unwanted noise above 65 decibels. For reference, 65 decibels is a normal conversation between two people about 3 feet apart. A concrete mixing truck is 85 decibels. So those concrete mixing trucks, which will be going all day long, will produce, technically speaking, noise pollution according to the World Health Organization. And then according to our code of ordinances, that does not meet having noise pollution, having dust, having all of these hazardous materials formed and out of his processes does not meet the required conditions of an M1 facility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello, Kyle Stark, 1641 G50 Highway. Good evening. Thank you for your service to our county as supervisors. As residents of unincorporated Warren County, we come to you this evening, our elected representatives, and ask you to protect our properties, our home values, our rural community, our neighborhoods, by voting in opposition to rezoning this 40 acres to be permanently occupied by heavy industry, even light industry, but this really falls under heavy. As you consider this application, you look to the Warren County Comprehensive Use Plan, which I propose to you is in opposition to the rezoning, apart from the arbitrary box drawn around every interstate interchange. Our interchange is quite different from a lot of interchanges. We have lots of homes. In fact, within a mile radius of this proposed site, there are 36 to 40 very nice acreages. And we take pride in our community, just as has been mentioned. The comp use plan zoning compatibility matrix shows no compatibility between heavy industry and acreages, rural acreages. So again, not compatible. It doesn't take much imagination or thought to see that a concrete plant perched on top of one of the highest points in Warren County is going to be not compatible with beautiful rolling hills, pristine acreages, farmland. We just have a beautiful area and we want to keep it that way. Heavy 18-wheelers, 25 to 30 is what he mentioned. That information has changed tonight. Coming, going, dust and stuff from the sand. I mean, this is stored outside. And the application also says that there will be mixing outside. And so there's a different picture painted with some of this stuff. So we'll see definitely compromised road safety, stressed roadways, interrupted views, and that's not what we want. What isn't hard to imagine, or what is really hard to imagine, what takes a lot of imagination is a concrete plant looking as beautiful as his renderings look. Those 30-foot trees, those don't happen overnight. They take a lot of time and energy and effort to water and maintain. There's just a lot going on there that doesn't quite look like it's maybe fully realistic. It is kind of a dream maybe. So those renderings look more like propaganda to me. And once this is rezoned, nothing stops it from him changing his plans. I mean, we're looking at a rezoning that will be permanent. It won't, it doesn't change. If he changes his, the county has little ability to change their, or enforce any ordinances once the rezoning. So I plead with you to oppose this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Brian Croxton, 16533 20th Avenue. You've already heard from my wife. I'm going to piggyback on what most of everyone has said so far. We're very concerned not only for the addition of industrial to our area, which is largely farm and homestead, all rural. 36 families, I believe, was in 1 mile radius alone. And you've already seen pictures of the 3 residents directly across and in the impact zone of the 1,250 feet of G50 up to the old and outdated interchange on the 35. They said they're going to be using mostly the I-35 interchange just to bring in their trucks and their mixing materials and all of that. That is a 1/4 mile off of the freeway and onto G50 for a truck to stop that's loaded to bear with everything it has, not to mention the other traffic. And even getting on, you're talking about getting on the interchange with an 80,000-pound vehicle in a 1/4 mile time. Now you can juxtapose that against the Hy-V plant with the loping 3/4 mile interchange on both ends, which is much easier for a large heavy-duty truck to take off the freeway and stop in time to make their turns to get onto the rural highway there to deliver to that warehouse. I'm also concerned because G50 being a farm-to-market road, not necessarily a factory-to-market road, I would say, isn't designed for this. You've seen some of the views from the pictures that they were showing you. They didn't bother to show you from the opposite directions, where you don't have the clear visibility to the proposed driveway for their large trucks. So you're going to be seeing cars coming uphill and realizing that a truck is turned on ahead of them too late with time to stop, because we're talking about a 55-mile-an-hour zone. It doesn't become 45 mile an hour until I think after the Pontiers residence, and then you're going onto the freeway right there. So there's a lot to say about road safety just in that small impact area. I'd also like to point out that, as they have said, yes, every interchange is proposed under the plan, which is not a legally binding document, but more of a guidance document, that every one of them would be suitable for some kind of industry. However, that doesn't take into account what's already happening in those interchanges. Ours specifically has gone to residential, homestead, and farm, and also going to the other county to Winterset and seeing hinterland and the bridges and all of that. Finally, in terms of the EMS infrastructure, I don't think everybody's concerned that that plant's going to burst into flames. It's a heavy industrial plant with heavy concrete beams and trucking. We're worried more about traffic accidents, crushing injuries, and other things like that, not to mention the chemicals and the combination mixes and things that may or may not be occurring outside, which is unclear at this point. Some of this material being outside has to get in somehow. If it's in a 3-wall and not its own tunnel system or whatever getting into this building, how is it being moved inside without being outside at some point? And yes, we have a high wind area, and this is on the highest point in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh. That was kind of you. Good evening, ma'am.
I am Margaret Bromo. I have lived 70 years at my farm at 2712 G50 Highway. I own farmland from 20th Avenue to 30th Avenue along G50 Highway. My land is northeast of the area proposed for rezoning from A1 agriculture to M1 light and industrial zone. I do not want this rezoned. I rent my land to a farmer. He uses the land for agriculture and for livestock. Turning your land, Steve, into an industrial site directly impacts my ability to earn an income. That's my income. My first concern is air and particle pollution. The concrete plant will increase pollution to my land and the animals that glaze on the land and drink from the pond and the stream. Now, Mr. Steve, you mentioned last time that there weren't any cows. My renter can put cows on all my land. I have it's just catty corner from his land, and I have a pond on that land, and then I have a stream that goes just about 1/4 of a mile down below, that drains down, that could drain down to it. The concrete plant will increase pollution to my land and the animal that graze on the land and drink from the pond and the stream. Now, they can drink from the pond or the stream. I am also concerned about water pollution. The proposed rezoned area drains directly to my pasture, which is located a quarter-mile east of the proposed rezoned site. My pasture land has a perennial stream, which is a water source for the livestock. Pollution to the stream will harm the cattle drinking the water. The proposed rezoned property drains directly to that stream that runs through my pasture. I am concerned about the road maintenance costs also, and us taxpayers in Warren County are going to pay for that. Lastly, G50 Highway is not just farmland, but it is a community. There are beautiful homes all along the highway. Changing this zone will cause high traffic with heavy equipment, pollution, and noise. It reduces the value of my land and the quality of the community that lives along it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Megan Ellison, 407 West Council Drive in St. Charles. I am here representing the City of St. Charles City Council as their member tonight. So you guys probably have in your packet the letter that we wrote to the Planning and Zoning Board. So we're glad to hear that some of the big trucks won't be coming through town in order to get their gravel. But there are two quarries out there. So there's the Marietta Quarry outside of Winterset, and then there's the Piru Quarry. So I think there's still some potential that there will be significant traffic coming through St. Charles. Problematic for us for two reasons. One, our road structures are asphalt and not designed to withstand the weight of that many trucks. We're already seriously concerned about our ability to keep maintaining that road with the current. So we just can't afford to have much more heavy-duty traffic on that road. The other thing that is particularly concerning to us when we talk about our first responders isn't really any issues with the plant itself, but the issues would be in relation to accidents, particularly at that interstate exchange. If you guys have gotten off there, especially if you're coming south, if you're coming south and trying to turn left out towards where this plant will be, that bridge is raised because when the DOT redid that bridge, they had to kind of lump it up in order to make it useful for a few more years. And you can't see very well. There have been several accidents out there already. And if there are large trucks coming to St. Charles, we're just fearful that that could really increase. So those are kind of our main concerns, obviously, with the trucks coming through town. We have a really active business district. If you guys haven't been lately, we have a ton of new stores open, and there's a lot of things going down there. We also have a really large elderly population, and they're frequently crossing the street, so large trucks coming through town presents a big risk to them as well because, you know, walking across the street from the post office to Montrose for coffee or whatever, we're just really concerned about the ability for the trucks to stop in time for them. So I think you guys have the remainder of our letter. I won't go through it all for you, but we would just, you know, stand with our opposition against this plant.
Thank you.
Jessica Stark, 1641 G50 Highway. We think industry is great. We think this industry is great. We welcome this industry to Warren County. We just welcome it into an industrial park where industry belongs. To say that putting this next to apartments and that's compatible is the same as putting it next to our acreages isn't the same. We're acreage dwellers. We live in rural Warren County for a reason. When you're an acreage dweller, you're an outdoor dog. My kids don't play video games. They're on four-wheelers and horseback, and they're playing baseball in the front yard. And it does decimate the property value of an acreage to be next to industry, different than an apartment building, where you're not having an outdoor existence and you're maybe not living there forever, like an acreage is your forever home here in Warren County. And just the character of G50 Highway and our acreages is really something special, and it's just not compatible with industry. I think that this is a wonderful industry, and I think that there's 30 acres for sale in Warren County right now, already zoned industrial. That would be a perfect fit. This was cheaper, but there's a reason. It's a bean field, and that doesn't mean that it's compatible. I think that it's a little misleading to say, oh, at the meeting we had people in opposition and people for it, like it's kind of even sides here. I think we have an overwhelming majority. All of us who live here are united in saying, you've always got one or two, but our petition, they said 20% is meaningful. So we got 340 signatures, which is 45% of the population. We just took what was meaningful and doubled it. We had 120 people, just our people, showed up in opposition to the zoning meeting. So of the total, that was like a lot of the percent. To rezone this is just, it's irreversible. It can't ever be turned back into homes or farmland. There's no ordinances in rural Warren County. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need them, but it makes zoning so important. All these restrictions that you're talking about, putting berms into it, there's absolutely no enforcement of that. At the December County Supervisors meeting, where they're talking about when they call the sheriff, and there's really nothing they can do, so it makes the zoning really important. It's not just one fussy neighbor lady. It's an overwhelming feeling of your constituents who live here and vote here that we don't want this here. We want it in Warren County, but it doesn't go here next to our homes and next to our acreages. And it makes your job tonight really, really important, and we beg you to vote no. Also, Pink Tractor Foundation looks right at this. Hundreds of people come. They've raised over $1 million, and every time somebody here gets cancer, a check shows up in the mail. The Hinterland Festival, these things depend on the setting. The setting is the rolling hills in the rural area, and we're really changing the character, and we're attached to these things in Warren County, and we don't want them to go away. We don't want to sacrifice them. We think we can have both here in Warren County. It just goes where it fits so that we can have both. We can have industry. We have industrial parks for that. We can have where we live. We can have where we farm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carly Ware, 16315 20th Avenue. I'm the owner of where Pink Tractor takes place. I guess this is more of a question, sitting in on this meeting, the presentation, and the zoning. We've never been told what's their hours of operation. Is this a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5? Is this a 7-day a week? What are those hours? Okay. Moving forward with that, I know a lot of people have brought up the future land use. One of the things in a previous supervisor meeting or zoning one was these places have been, designated for M1. The only reason is their access to consumers. I want to ask you, think about the consumers. This isn't a gas station where you get those people coming off the interstate. So that is the only reason why those places have been designated M1 is because of access to their consumers. Again, in the future plan, there was a goal, 3.2. Warren County aims to maintain the county road system in rural areas to minimize long-term cost when providing adequate access. I'd like to ask you guys, have you traveled this location? Okay, I've lived here for the last year, but I grew up in the home that I currently own. I don't recall a time when this road has actually been worked on and when it has been redone. So in the 25 years that our property has been there, I can't tell you that it has ever been redone. I can tell you one time the bridge had a light on it, and they were probably doing some sort of patchwork, and then obviously they just recently did it. But again, in 25 years, I don't think the roads have been fixed. Again, there was another one as part of the master future plan, 1.35. It encouraged commercial development serving regional commercial needs in existing cities, having areas zoned and serviced by adequate public facilities and services for such development. Does this location truly meet those criteria? And as you can hear from a lot of concerned people, this road doesn't. I take it every morning, every night to go to work. There are times that I will put my turning signal on well in advance to turn onto 20th Avenue because people do go very fast through there. I take the interstate. I get on at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there are times that my vehicle cannot get over onto the interstate. It is a blind spot. People pop over right in behind the bridge. They don't get over. How are these large vehicles going to get over? And again, I think that's important to know what time they operate. From 6 to 5, that interstate is extremely busy for people getting on and off of it. So I definitely think you guys should really heavily consider some of those future land plans outside of this just being designated as M1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Renee Puntier, 1797 G50. I live right across the road from this. So of course, I'm disappointed that we're even talking about it. I don't understand why they cannot just go to the industrial part of Warren County. A couple of the things that I had on my list have already been touched on, but I'm gonna kind of further it a little bit. This berm, are they talking full-grown plants that they're gonna put on this berm? Are they gonna maintain the berm? Weeds grow in berms. Are they gonna maintain after it's put in? He said that there's a concrete plant in Urbandale, I believe, and it's by some apartment buildings, and there's no problem. That's apartments. These are homes that we've worked hard for. So I ask you guys, please, would you want to live by this? I mean, it's just something to think about. Would you guys want to live by this? Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. So online?
She can speak real quick.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you barely. Can we get a mic to that, please? Okay.
My name is Dan Hutton. I live at 2516 Victory Lane in St. Charles. I'm actually not here. This is across the interstate from where I reside. But I do understand a lot of the concerns these people are having. One thing I am here to speak on is I also serve on the I-35 school board, and this is in our district. A few of the questions I would ask is, and I understand change is hard and everything else, I would hate to have it across the street from my home. G50 has needed a lot of maintenance for a long time. They're just starting to do the bridge approaches, but from an aspect of the school board and looking at the annual budget and everything else, Interstate 35 has the 4th highest tax levy rate in the state out of 300 and some districts. We need help with that type of stuff. I asked everybody that spoke tonight, and I have compassion with what they're saying, but some of my questions are is, if not now, when? If not here, where? Where do we go from here? Because we don't have a high tax levy rate because we have an out-of-control budget. We're just trying to make do with what we have. We don't have the infrastructure going in and people selling farms to turn into developments, which is great in one aspect, you look at it, but when you're looking at an aspect of it as, hey, we have a budget to look at $50,000 that Mr. Jordison is going to pay in taxes, that's a teacher's salary. Again, I will say I understand what everybody's concerns are, but that's where I have to look at some of it. And I'll also say I'm not here speaking on behalf of the whole I-35 school board. This is me and the way I'm perceiving it. The other thing I'll say is he's going to bring engineers in. He's going to bring other construction stuff in. There'll be stuff, maybe opportunities for the high school to get some work to do there, like work programs and everything else. But the biggest thing I can say is if we're not doing it here, I mean, people keep saying Warren County, Warren County. Well, I'm thinking I-35 district somewhere because I'd like it to help us out. Our budget's already clear up there. That's really all I've got to say. And again, I can appreciate what everyone said, but we have got to get our budget under control, and stuff like this helps. I keep getting told we're property poor at the I-35 district, and the problem is we aren't building any more homes really, or any businesses, and we're chasing people out of town, so to speak. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. It is. We're going to see if we can amplify that sound a little bit, but yes. Are you able to make it louder? Give us a moment. We're trying to get you so that everyone in the room can hear you as well. Okay. Well, let's give it a try. We'll listen as best we can. It's showing yellow, but you can keep going. A little more. Thank you. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Gokin. I live at 17746 140th Avenue here in Warren County. I am also the executive director of Warren County Economic Development. So it is, as you know, my job to grow the commercial and industrial tax base in Warren County. So I would be remiss if I didn't come and at least share the positives that can come from a development like this. As JD kind of mentioned, you saw the taxable valuations and what that could look like in comparison to the revenue that comes off of residential versus ag. It's just an incredible difference. As a Warren County resident, we all want better roads. We want our bridges fully functioning. These are all things that cost money, and they get paid for with projects just like this. So in my experience, in my line of work, one thing that really had me kind of, I guess, excited about this project is Steve is coming in to Warren County and he is not asking for anything from Warren County. Typically, a business will come along and they'll say, you know, okay, what's in it for me? Can I get a tax abatement? You know, they're looking for things to help offset the astronomical cost of construction. He is not asking for any of those things, so that is a very rare opportunity for us as a county. I would also add all of the things that they are looking to do as far as being a good neighbor. They're adding the berms and the trees and the asphalt. All of that are, all of those things are not required of them. They are doing that out of the goodness of their hearts because they want to be a good neighbor in this neighborhood. They care about the people around them, and I think that really speaks a lot about their character, Steve's character, and their company. I also would mention, I feel like we've had this opportunity just kind of sitting there untapped for a very long time in Warren County. We are very fortunate to have an entire western border and interstate. And we have severely untapped potential there as far as commercial and industrial growth. I think the people before us and to current day have all identified that it makes sense for M1 in our land use to call for those things along the interstate. That is a logical place for that type of growth. It makes sense for businesses. It's less intrusive to the rural Warren County residents. I think someone said if not here, then where? I think it makes much more sense for a business like this to be located near an interstate with very minimal rural traffic versus out in the middle of nowhere where they're even farther. Oh, okay.
Thank you. We are still in public hearing. Is there any more comments from the public at this time? I'll leave it open for another minute for you to decide. Or online. Is there anyone else online who wants to speak on this topic? Good evening.
Hello, my name is Lauren Wilgenbush, 3600 G50 Highway, just west or just east of this area. One thing real quick I will say is that $50,000 sounds great when it's going towards a teacher or going towards our roads, but the likelihood of that happening is probably not very much. So consider that when all of that goes towards other things than stuff that's actually important to this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one question to ask Steve. Last time, Steve, did you say there were no cows that were close to the land?
I think Hilsebeck has a few cows over it.
What did you say?
I said, I think Hilsebeck, my neighbor to the west, I believe he has some
Cows
cows.
are fine there, but they can be in there. And then
We need to stop.
Okay.
That my cows, this that Barbara was his cows, not mine, his cows. He can have them in the land. My land is just catty corn and deer, right there on 20.
With a lot of
There can be cows there, but down the hill where that creek is.
and with a lot of respect, we're gonna keep going through the public comment section, okay?
Thank you.
You can certainly have that conversation at a later time if you'd like. Looking around the room, is there any last public comments? Okay. I'm fishing for them. I want to give you a chance.
My name is Mike Morris. I live at 1730 R45 Highway. I have a friend that he worked many years at a concrete plant building precast concrete products, and in doing so, he experienced. He told me of the runoff, the possible pollution, and we draw our water from the well from St. Mary's, and to have that polluted is just it's extremely upsetting to me, and it does not fit the code requirement. It is not an M1. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in the area. It doesn't fit the code requirements. I know money is the root of all evil. I know people keep trying to entice you with money, money, money. That's what it seems to me. Oh, but he's bringing money. Look at the state of our country and money and all the people that have got bought out. And this is what it takes me to, and this is what it makes me think of. It's just money, 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 and that's, to me, it's a huge problem because this is our homes and our land and like I have livestock, we have a homestead, and we came here for that. We didn't come here, to have to worry about testing the land to see what chemicals he's running off that's not getting neutralized or what the case may be, because it's not going to be perfect. I guarantee that I do construction and the concrete dust, it flies, and like she said, the noise pollution, the dust, the chemicals, the form oil, all that's going to seep into the land. What about it's problematic. So anyway, please vote no, and that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Okay, last call. Mr. Dalton, would you mind addressing, did you keep notes? I kept pretty good notes of the,
I'll keep notes, and I'll certainly will, if I miss anything, I'll let you.
Thank you.
members address them to me as well.
Can you lift up the microphone, please? Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. So I guess as to Mr. Pontier, in my experience, I've been doing this a long time with the big ready mix production, and a lot of his comments reminded me to an issue I had in Des Moines about 2.5 years ago. Neighbors were concerned about dust on their cars and on their houses. We brought in our environmental team. We looked at it. Polk County has its own air quality division. They looked at it and determined it was actually city right-of-way, a limestone road, which is not unlike our county roads, and the dust that was generated off that was the fugitive dust. So to solve that issue, it wasn't generated from our site, but the neighbors were concerned about it. They thought it was doing all this damage to their property. When we found out actually it was city property, we offered the city to buy it, we paved it, and took care of that fugitive dust issue there. Comparing it to the Monarch Cement Terminal that's a totally different operation. The volume of cement, Monarch is a supplier to ready-mix producers in town. This is totally not a fair comparison whatsoever. With the site, rural charm and the conversion of ag land, I'm certainly not, I'm like the last person that would be advocating for industrial taking over ag. I come from a farming family. I grew up in a town not much bigger than St. Charles. I get it. We're not an insolent industrialist saying take over your community. We get it. Iowa as a state, 1846 was predominantly green ground. If you look at your county, based on that chart, you're still 80% dominant there. So you've held the line, and that's great. What I am saying is we're just stepping into what the county's already planned. And we're not coming here and saying do something different than what your best planners, taking input from all your community members, have already tried to do for the last 20 years and the next 20 years for this particular site. The charm factor, the neighborhood use, the EMS. So on the EMS, here's what I would say about that. We're already doing things way more intense than this use. When I'm comparing it to a dense residential, what I'm saying is that's a very congested space with a much more intense use. Here we're not talking about feet, we're talking about acres of distance as a buffer between us and neighbors. And we can make the really hard stuff work. I'm very confident it's gonna work out here as well. In terms of the dust coming off the site, I had another location where it was actually the Veterans Cemetery, right off of the Van Meter exit. They were concerned that we put a ready-mix plant there. Again, 10 times the use, 10 times the intensity of what Steve's proposing here. That it was gonna soil the cemetery and lead to, disruption of those tombstones. We showed them the air quality testing. We showed them what we had to do. We've gotten along fine. In fact, we closed down our operations whenever there's a burial. We have one of our boom trucks there with probably one of the biggest American flags in the country flying And that's just, and I didn't want to bring those up, but those are examples of what we do with our neighbors. We're not insolent. We're not trying to steamroll anybody. We're looking at your county and we're saying, this is what you've already earmarked it for. We're ready to do it. The EMS burden, it's just not there. I mean, when you talk about the intensity of what we're already doing and the load and burden we've been on any EMS in anywhere we're at, I can't actually think of one single. We maybe have had someone come in that had some medical response to some medication they had, but I can't think of a single incident that we've had at any of our locations. You're gonna have scratches and cuts and tears and things like that, and we have occupational therapy we send them to in Des Moines. It's not to say it's not gonna happen, but we do a really good job of trying to train our people, and we've got a proven track record. If this was a guy who's just starting up for the first time, I would see a lot more merit to those claims, but he has the people and systems in place to do it. Reduction in values of land, I don't see that either. In fact, I actually asked your treasurer's office if anywhere in Warren County, if there's any properties that get offsets because they're next to industrial sites, and the answer was no. And I will also show you, I think this is gonna be very helpful. If you draw your attention to the screen, I just wanna put this neighborhood in perspective. So I believe Ms. Keeney indicated that this site is not being used as industrial. Well, what you're looking at here is a 2017 picture from Google Earth. And if you kind of orient yourself, you see the interstate there to the left. To the south would be towards the bottom of the screen, and the north would be up the screen. And what you're seeing there on Hillsabeck is a temporary ready-mix batching plant operation. So to say the site's not already been used for that, it has. What's interesting here, so this snapshot is 2017, you have a heavy industrial use right there. So if we backed up, 1991, that parcel was already zoned M1. Your county ordinance in 2002 showed this area for light industrial and highway commercial. Then Hillsabeck got his permit in 2017, so what you're looking at there was completely lawful. Both Hillsabeck and Pontier rezoned theirs M1. So whether they're using it for more, Jacoby rezoned his. What's interesting now, if you look at the timeline, Starks bought their property in 2018. So at that time, they would have had public notice of the zoning ordinance showing that this site is going to be used for heavy industrial or light industrial and heavy commercial. They would have seen their neighbors immediately to the left of them. For someone to say, well, it's going to impact my property value when they already bought property that's immediately adjacent to and surrounded by heavy industrial, I don't think that's all that credible. Then you have the Pontiers building their second residence in 2021. I think he indicated they finished it in 22, but the county records indicates 2021. And then Keeney's bought their property in 2021. So normally when we deal with these issues, it's sort of this element of surprise that, well, we didn't know there was an intention for this to be used for industrial or even commercial. It's the same arguments. And in this site, we check all the boxes, plus you have this in your favor. To show you an indication, I just looked in Warren County too, to show not just what we're doing in other counties, but look at that yellow area right there is a ready-mix plant. Look how close it is with residential homes. And if you were to look at the assessed values of those homes, they're not dinged or dropped because of the adjacency to that site. Here's one in Indianola. And you can see how this relative to the site that we're talking about, again, here we're talking distances of feet. Where Steve's at, we're talking distances of acreages. Again, all the effort he's going to, these are concessions that Hillsabeck doesn't have to honor, that Jacoby wouldn't have to honor. If those properties were to be sold, they're dealing with the same thing. Hours of operation, I did want to address Carly's question on that. At this point, we're anticipating a single shift. No one's anticipating night work. I mean, it's tough enough to get people to come and work as is, so we're anticipating a single shift, and if we have the demand for it, we could be running on Saturdays. There's no expectation that we don't run any of our other locations on Sundays, but it could be 5 days a week and a half a day or even a full day on Saturday if the demand was there. So I also want to say something about this survey. Actually, back up. On St. Charles, I think we addressed the bulk of the concern was that we're not going to be sourcing from the quarry to the west. She indicated there's a second quarry. I'm not even aware of that one. And certainly we have zero interest in going west of St. Charles. We will likely use the same companies that we're sourcing materials from right now. But the survey that she indicated, and I think that was Mrs. Stark that indicated this community petition that was signed. Here's my take on that. I don't want to take away anything from anyone. There's a lot of addresses on here from St. Charles, which if they were concerned about traffic going through town, okay, I think we addressed that. The other thing I would indicate about this survey is all these people that signed this, petition, signed it before they heard this. I mean, I think a lot of people, this is the deepest dive any of you have seen it. Certainly wasn't presented to anybody at Planning and Zoning. And the other issue I have with this petition is they're signing something saying that they're against heavy industrial. If you actually read the typing on this, it says, we're against rezoning A1 agriculture to M2 heavy industrial. Now, in fairness, someone did write in cursive or in penmanship next to it, M1 light industrial. You know, I'm not speaking for all those people, but even if they say, let's say 300 people had heard the same presentation you heard tonight, and they said, we understand the value, we understand what it's doing, we don't want it next to this neighborhood. I would submit to you members that you're representing 50,000 people. Each of you approximately have 10,000 people in each of your districts. As this 300 people, even if it's 300 totally opposed to what Steve's trying to do, if we look at it this is kind of how I look at it. So let's say we heard from 40 or 60 people tonight totally opposed to this man. And it's him against everyone, and I'm doing my best to explain to you what he's proven he's done from his history. But really, we need to also think about the people who haven't spoke. Who else has got an interest in this? In your 50,000 people, who else is not taking the time to come out and speak tonight? And I appreciate everyone who did speak. This is not fun to get up here and talk. No one likes doing it. But who else is behind Steve that's going to benefit? His future employees. If I went to any of his locations today and said, hey guys, it's on the table tonight that you might not have a job, you better believe that these men and women and their families would be here speaking and pleading with you to keep that job for them. And that impact effect of that on your communities, you guys are smarter than I am in terms of what that multiplier is going to do for your local churches, your school, your sport teams, and people that are going to be impacted by that. The other thing here is I'm also speaking on behalf of the interests of the people in the rural county. A lot of times in these situations, you have an urban-rural divide. Here's where the tax revenues of what Steve's proposing is going to go directly to county rural. When you look at that tax statement, I believe the last individual that spoke said it's not going to go to schools. Well, you can look at a tax bill and see where it's going. This tax money is going to Warren Rural and to I-35 School District. Thank you to the member who came and spoke on behalf of that school, because we didn't, Steve is a very unassuming, quiet guy. We don't reach out and rally the troops to come and speak. We just say our case, and on the merits, we let it stand. So I am grateful for that man that came and spoke, because that's the other beneficiaries here is that I-35 School District. So when you look at the impact of that tax bill, where this is going to go, and that 50,000 is not just pulled out of air, okay? Like if you there's a ready-mix plant or a precast plant in Indianola. I happen to look at their land value and their assessed value, and it's under the land size of what Steve's got, and they're paying 30. So we're anticipating this thing could be anywhere between 50 to 100,000, given the total size of land and building that Steve's putting in. I do understand the concern. I really am sort of the most unlikely guy to make this presentation, because I would prefer to be in the position of saying we want to preserve our ag, we want to preserve our rural neighborhoods, and so I totally understand those voices. In fact, I mean, I've advocated against heavy industrial. When people say industry, they think big smokestacks and particulate and all that kind of stuff. That's not what this is. This is you saw the video, what this thing's going to look like. It's contained, it's controlled. There were a couple of comments made as to, well, why is Steve at the one meeting saying he's going to do some stuff outside and some stuff inside? Well, if you look at your county, that ordinance does say it needs to be inside, but you have users already that we know that are in the county that they have stuff outside. So it's part of a learning process for Steve to recognize, okay, well, technically the rules are that's got to be inside. So it's not a sleight of hand of saying, hey, we want to do this and we'll do that. We'll play by whatever your rules are. If your rules are it's got to be inside, it will be done. The batching part of it will be done inside. I will say, having done this in multiple jurisdictions in Iowa, your ordinance is very similar to most other counties. Most other counties have the same classification, light industrial for this type of use, and it also has that general nuisance standard. Most of the comments that were directed in terms of dust, noise, pollutants, it was almost like it was predetermined that we're already dealing with a contamination issue. When in fact, this guy, if you look at his track record, he's got zero of that. We work very closely with actually the EPA's primacy is to the Iowa DNR. We know those people, we work very close with them. It's not like this is just a wild, we're just gonna try this, and now all of a sudden we're under the scrutiny because we had some really bad event happen. That just is not the case. And so that general nuisance standard that's in there, that's protection for the county. So when someone comes in like Steve, who's maybe not gonna do what Steve's saying he's gonna do, the county has teeth to go out and say, Mr. Jordison, here's what our ordinance says, you're not following it, we need to bring this into line. That's the whole purpose of that. It's not to prejudge you before you've even opened your doors. There were a lot of comments at planning and zoning saying, well, I don't see he has a SWIP. I don't see he doesn't have an SPCC. I see he doesn't have it. Well, this is the first step. When you trigger those DNR applications, it requires on-site monitoring. It requires record keeping. I mean, there's a bunch to it. So you've got to get the zoning first. Otherwise, the state agencies are going to look at you and say, why are you even here? Another point on that I would make is, The last gentleman that spoke said his friend had worked at one of these, and he said it's so dusty and all that. Well, Obama's office passed a regulation in 2016 that brought the airborne particulate content from 250 micrograms per cubic meter down to 25. So an individual who had worked in any kind of industry, and again, those aren't ours. I don't know where that individual worked, but those aren't our sites. But even if he had been working for the last 20 years, you go back to 2016 forward, everybody's had to tighten everything up. I believe, Mr. Chairman and board members, I think I covered the bulk of those. Can anybody think of something I didn't?
Will there be any, will there be any concrete cutting on site?
No, I mean, if you think about it, what you're trying to do is minimize waste. So everything's, I mean, just think of it like these are big trays, like we're making a cake, and we're gonna put these ingredients together. The flour of this cake is cement, and it's gonna lock it up. And so you don't want waste. That's the other thing about this is, you know, if I poured your driveway tomorrow, I might have plus or minus a couple of yards in there depending on how well your subgrade did, right? So we're gonna have extra material for washout and stuff. Here, we know the exact dimensions of the specified walls. We know the materials that's going in there. We don't want any waste. And so it's not like a parking lot or driveway where you gotta cut, you know, saw joints into it because now you're worried about shrinking and cracking. You're forming this thing to the exact dimensions of what they want. So it's not like we pour it long and then you're ripping, you know, saw joints through it. You're pouring it to the exact form size.
I think there was a question about natural gas or propane.
Okay, yeah, so there is no natural gas there at the location. There will be propane to heat the facility, but that'll just be warm in a 40,000 square foot building. That's not, there's no part of our process that involves heating, torches, you know, any of the industrial requirements that we have to meet, whether it's lockout, tagout, hazmat, bloodborne pathogen training, we do all that stuff. We are very thorough on that. We have very serious professionals that help run our locations, and then he has a whole team behind him. I mean, I'm the one that's speaking tonight, but I have a limited role. We have environmental engineers, industrial hygiene. I mean, we have the whole team that you would expect. Did jog my mind to one other point.
I think there was probably, I think we all took a few notes, so if the board has questions for him that you'd like addressed.
Mm-hmm. Can you address the form oil and muriatic
Yes.
acid?
Okay, so that's a release agent. So like if I poured a basement for you, for example, I'm gonna treat those forms with, they used to treat it with diesel, now there's release agents you can get. And then I'm gonna pour the concrete in it, and I need to be able to strip those forms off without damaging the concrete. That's what a release agent is. There's all kinds of different release agents. There's some that are biodegradable, there's some that are not. The reality is the DNR requires you to keep inventory of those. There's reporting forms you have to submit on it. And those forms, everything that goes into the concrete is basically consumed by the concrete. There's no off-gassing or odors or anything in any of these processes. It's basically absorbed into the material itself. And I mean, I went through our inventory list with the State Fire Marshal's office on the sprinkling, because that was one of my concerns early on was, well, okay, we're gonna work around this water constraint by running our water off of storage that were built at night. But is the state gonna look at this as we have to have sprinklers? We have facilities that are in the H. Okay, remember when I showed you the 3 classifications? The highest you can get, we have those, and we don't have issues even there. And so we know the issues to trigger it. And so I talked to the fire marshal's office, and we went through the code analysis, said, yeah, you're an F2. This is low risk, low hazard. The spill containment and control measures will all be in there for any of those incidentals. There'll be incidentals that we would have in mix designs for like accelerators in the mix. But again, that's all stuff that's going in the cookie batter or the cake batter. It's getting consumed as part of the mix. There's no excess that's going to be going out. And the other thing I would draw, there is, if you look at this site, and I totally appreciate everyone's perspective on, no one here, certainly not us, want any environmental issues, period. If you look at where Steve's at and where he's gonna be putting those containment areas, we're a long ways away from any water body, right? I mean, we get really concerned if we're dealing with DNR where we've got a major tributary or stream or something there, they're gonna be very focused on that. We'll still be as equally focused here, but we have a buffer even around this thing. So my point is, we have those intense uses much closer to navigable waterways. Here we have land masses all the way around where he's going to be putting these containment areas.
That was one of my questions. You had a neighbor with some cattle who seemed concerned about water pollution or...
Yeah, I think a lot of, in fairness to everyone here, and I mean, I have never presented to Warren County before, and I do hope people, if you keep my name and some big industrial use comes down here and you want help, I'm happy to help. I am not concerned about this group, this family, and their operation given their past record. If anyone's afraid of their cattle getting poisoned, their family getting poisoned, the air particulate, I would say that's a lot of fear that's clouding actual judgment. If I can show, if I show you what I've showed you there, and I can tell you from history of what we do, I have zero concern about that. No one wants anyone to get sick. No one wants, and if you look at the area, the fugitive dust coming off of a secondary road, that's limestone, right? That's my wife's, we have friends in Madison County, they say, why do we have to put so many tons of limestone everywhere? I go, well, look at it. On a windy day when people are going down the road, it's all going in the air. That's limestone. And we're talking about three-sided containment. We're talking about limestone that's been cleaned. We're talking about asphalt millings and concrete on our traffic routes getting into the site to keep down dust. I didn't mean to offend any of the neighbors saying they have rock. I'm just showing the difference. If we wanted, the cheapest thing for us would be to say, we're just gonna run a rock road all the way to the back and our trucks are gonna be coming up and down that thing and putting dust in the air. My point in saying that is, look, we're trying to show you people that there's value here. Your county's already indicated this is the spot where they want someone just like what Steve's proposing. And if not here, and if not now, and if not with this guy, like, where are you gonna go? And for someone to say, well, put it somewhere else, go somewhere else, well, we're gonna be back to a lot of the same issues, because now you're someone else and it's the same things coming up. So to check all of those green boxes, I told Steve, when he asked me, and Steve, this is the first time Steve saw this tonight. That shows you how much trust we have in each other. I usually, if I have zoning recommendation, and I have the current conformity with land use, and if I have neighbors that already have it in their backyard already, I don't even have to have green on most of the rest of these, because usually the tax incentives and the job creation is what our communities want. And here I'm saying, like take any of these out. Say we're on a gravel road. Well, no one's gonna want this on a gravel road. Say we're on some site that's a county road that G50 is not gonna have funding in it. Another thing about G50, if you look at who's paying for that road, it's the people that are buying millions of gallons of fuel. People just like Steve. That's what's paying for that road. So you take these greens out of any of these, you don't have support. He's a bad actor. He's got a bad reputation. He's got, all kinds of litigation and problems following him over a 50-year. That's not the case with this guy. Or it's near a floodplain. Okay, those are big. Take any of those other green things out of this, and a lot of times it's a high hurdle. But you look at all the factors we have here. I do sympathize with the neighbors, and I know I have no idea how this vote's going to go. I can tell you, members of the public, this is the first time I've spoken on this subject with anyone on this stage. Okay, no one up here. There's no back-end deals. They don't know us. They're not socially connected to Steve or me. We don't go to church. Our kids don't socialize. We don't have any political connection. These people, if you want to see open democracy, this is it. This is balancing out everybody in this community's interest, from the school to the rural staff to the immediate neighbors. And what I can tell you, depending on if we earn your votes tonight, I can tell you that we will be sympathetic to the neighbors. Obviously we're going to need to run a business here. But when the dust settles, I can tell you from experience, we get along with our neighbors. Hinterland was another thing that just reminded me. So Hinterland's very important. Steve's got family connections to Hinterland, okay? The other thing I can tell you is, Steve, if you compare Hinterland to the state fairgrounds, I think we would all concede that the state fair has got the upper hand in terms of population and impact in the state. Steve has a light industrial site where almost, what would you say, Steve? How many blocks away from the? Yeah, so they use so we coordinate with the Iowa Fair Board to let them use some of the site for parking. So, I think we look at all these concerns, and I would say if you're looking at the merits of this thing on balance and the overall positive net impact this thing's gonna have, I would respectfully ask for your vote tonight. Does anybody have any additional questions for me before I sit down and let you deliberate? Which one? Muriatic acid? Okay, so with muriatic acid, we will have muriatic acid is usually used for our ready-mix plants for cleaning. So if we have a truck that's at a location and a guy just didn't clean it up good enough and it's got to come back to the site, there can be a spray that we'll put on it. Muriatic will actually etch the concrete to remove it, to loosen it up. So with muriatic acid, the protocol with that is personal protective equipment around it. There's signage that is required to be on on the storage units. If the storage comes into another unit, you're carrying it to another spot, that's all got to be labeled. There's SDS sheets that go with it. So worker safety right there is basically first and foremost. If any of that processed water goes, say some of that happened to get down, I don't know, in a floor drain that ran into our processed water, what's going to happen is that's going to go out to our storage tank and it's going to settle. Now you're having acid with alkalinity. So the problem with processed water with concrete is the alkalinity goes up, which means your pH level goes up. You add acid to it, it brings it down. But whatever's happening inside that water, it's being contained there and repurposed inside the operation itself. So again, nothing is going to be going off, running off onto the site. Well, there's two options that the state DNR will allow you to do. One is a lined pond. So one you dig, none of the two ponds that we showed on there are actually be the detention for this. They're just on there for site use and site topography and layout. A detention basin for this can either be earthen and lined with clay. You have to do soil testing on to show that there's no impervious holes on it. If there are, you have to supplement it with bentonite. But most likely what we're going to do is concrete containment. So it'll be solid surfaced. We have this at our ready mix plants already. I mean, the waste product that goes in there to most people is actually a premium product for us. We'll pump that out and we'll recycle those fines that work their way to the bottom. So,
Can you correct you on this statement you made?
yeah, you can.
Okay, he discounted that entire petition.
Okay.
He said you looked at
Sir,
the address.
can we have you come up and address so we can have this for the record? Thank you.
Tim Cochran, 3540 G50 Highway, St. Charles. My point being St. Charles. He said he looked at the petition. Everybody was in St. Charles. He said, we already addressed St. Charles. They don't have a problem because it's not coming from the quarries. Rural mail delivery. St. Charles delivers clear over to St. Charles. That entire petition is St. Mary's residence or rural between St. Charles and St. Mary's. It's not St. Charles. Just as you probably don't know, Pearl is the largest rural delivery in the United States. You totally discounted us by saying they're all St. Charles address. It doesn't apply. I just want to make that point clear.
Okay, thank you for that. And so what I'm saying there when I said we've addressed St. Charles concern, I was referring to the individual who from city staff at St. Charles was saying that their primary concern was the road access to the Piru Quarry. And so what I was trying to indicate there is we're addressing that by saying we're not going west. My only indication literally with respect to this petition, and it's a moot point, is that even if we take everybody on here being opposed to it, that's only 300 of your 50,000 residents. And my concern on this is I literally have the petition right in front of me, and it says, we the neighbor citizens of the county are against rezoning of A1 agriculture to M1 heavy industrial. And so my only point to that is, did the people actually know what they were signing on? And to say that there's no St. Charles addresses, I see them right here on page 1. St. Charles, 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 St. Charles. Yeah, but the.
Okay, order.
I'm not trying to offend anybody, or guys, I'm just saying that when I look at this petition, it's not entirely clear if these people knew what they were objecting. You people, if you're objecting to it, that's understandable.
Okay, come on up, sir. Yep.
I didn't know if I could, since I've already addressed. Could you back up your slide to show us the site that you showed that was being used as a M1 site, but it was from a picture back in 2017, I think you said.
Okay. This one here?
You showed it along the road. It showed them kind of being.
Oh, this site, this one right here?
Yeah.
This site.
Okay, yeah, the one that's now an empty lot, but you said it was a batch mix plant that was set up for a while.
Yeah, if you look at the equipment there, that's a batching operation. You have bulk material stockpiles and a batching operation.
Do you remember who that outfit was that had that?
I don't.
Yeah, his name was Norris Asphalt and Paving out of Harvey, Iowa. And I'm the guy who called the DOT because they were pulling side dumper semis out of that lot, out of that plant, and they ran them all the way through G50, down R45, 92. They took all the back roads to Harvey. I found out later from the DOT officer said that they were ducking they weren't permitted to run these heavy trucks on I-35. They were afraid they were gonna get caught. I turned them in, the DOT got involved, I called Warren County, they got involved, and about 2 weeks later, that place was torn down and they moved it out of there. So that wasn't a good industrial neighbor, or that wasn't a good industrial site. That's why it's sitting there empty now. I'm not saying Mr. Jordison is that way, but when you brought that up to show that that was being used for it, yeah, it was being used all right. And it pretty much destroyed our streets and our highway going through our little town. So I just wanted to clarify.
I'd like to clarify some other miss that he had.
Okay.
Let me address
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I'm gonna address that in a minute.
The-
So my only point in this was to show the timeline of what went where when. So it's not a surprise element to.
Well, you were showing that it was being used for that, and it was, but
Yeah.
it also shut it down.
Yeah, but my point to this is that normally if you go to, let's say this was all greenfield, and someone would say, well, I didn't even know this was zoned M1. Well, at this timeline, here's the indications that someone buying property here would have already known. You've got, if you look at the zoning, you've already have M1 in 1991. You've got another 2 M1s in 2018. That ready-mix plant or batch plant that you're talking about was 2017 that was ultimately permitted, and now they have the full use on it. Here's the irony of all this. If Steve owned that ground right there, that's the site that you're talking about, there wouldn't even be a discussion tonight. This is already zoned M1. Well, if you go into a neighborhood that already has these uses, regardless of whoever was there before, I mean, you're always going to have, we could all pull out examples of the worst guy who's done the worst thing that led to the, massive loss and casualty and damage. But it's unfair to put that on a man who for almost 50 years now doesn't have any of that track record. And that's my only point is, I understand the concerns that you guys have with this having one more use that's similar to those M1s that are around it. But it's unfair to castigate Mr. Jordison on the basis of all these other bad actors that have hurt your community.
I didn't do that. In fact, if you would move into that spot right bordering the interstate, maybe it wouldn't be such an issue, but you're encroaching into the
Okay. All right, guys, we're gonna keep public meeting. If you've spoken, you've had your 3 minutes, and we're not gonna keep interrupting.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I guess, well, let's let he did want to say one.
That's fine. I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's fine.
That'll be the last one, though.
That's fine. So, originally bought the farm, yes, in 2008. I didn't put a new house up in 2021. We started building it, didn't close until 2022. But that's fine. I mean, that's 6 months. But that farm property has been there since 1909. And that's when we bought it in 2008, was because it is a nice farmstead. And we feel like we've kept it only better. Number 2, you talked about Monarch Cement and that dust. Why did Ruan move out? Ask them. I had a brother-in-law still works for him, and I can tell you the dust over there that comes from cement. I work on equipment that has cement dust on it. The muriatic acid, he's correct. That's what you have to spray it down with in order to get it off. Do I need to spray down my 1909 farmhouse, my 2021, 22 brick house, my Morton building, all my other 1909 buildings out there with muriatic acid? And then I'm gonna have to put containment in, or I'll be in against the EPA's rules. So, again, I don't think the guy was picking on Steve with that. I do understand, and I've heard greatly that if he can't get this passed, yeah, maybe he will work something out with Hillsabeck on buying that since it is M1. But if so, he can't have outdoor product, which is what was going on over there, and it covered the Starks house immensely. So, I mean, they couldn't even keep up with it pressure washing it. I felt bad for them. That south wind, when it comes out of the south, coming that way at about 35 mile an hour, and it's only about 15 mile an hour in Des Moines is what the stations say, they need to come out there and stand on that hill. It is windy 90% of the time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I just read real briefly.
Fine.
I appreciate what that gentleman just said. The only thing I would say is Monarch, again, is apples to oranges. It's a supply terminal for cement. This is a ready-mix manufacturing tightly controlled environment. The dust coming off of Hillsabeck, you look at that site, there's a lot of rock and gravel just on transfer lanes. That's why Mr. Jordison's proposing millings and concrete coming into it. And the last point I would make is with the muriatic acid, the reason why our ready-mix plant uses it because we have a truck that's 30, 40 minutes away. And so if that gets hard on there, he's got to come in, and that's how we clean it off. If you're talking about a manufacturing facility that's going into that bucket that you saw, you're right there to wash it down. I mean, so the impact of needing a muriatic acid to clean a ready-mix truck that could be out in rural Iowa coming back to a site is a much more higher probability than even in this location. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield my time back to you and certainly address any questions any other board member has. Otherwise, I'll sit down and let you.
You're okay.
take
Is there any other questions from the board? I had one more. There was a comment from maybe a couple of the members about the berm, maintenance of the berm, tree planting, these sorts of things. What has any of Mr. Jorgensen's other properties had berms? Are they maintaining them?
Yeah,
what's the
so
proposition?
probably the only, so most areas we're at, they don't even require it. The location in Van Meter, we do have landscaping that we put in there. We also put shielded lighting in that parking lot. We'll do the same thing here. We will seed the berm. In terms of the age of the plants, I mean, this is where common sense would kick in. What I would expect is if we get the vote, we would coordinate with neighbors. We're going to want to look at, okay, where in particular would you like us to put trees in this? I mean, we're going to be reasonable with people. I'm not going to say that we're just going to tailor to every single thing. You know, here, I want the tree in here, or I want it 10 feet over there. But we will certainly make an effort to reach out to them and say, okay, what part of this, you know, because a lot of it's not going to be visible. If there's an area that becomes of concern, we will be open to putting trees in some locations that are more favorable. Like if there's a stretch that, you know, I think Carly indicated she's the one that's up at the 2-story. If Carly and Dane's place are looking down into it and they say, geez, you know, in the springtime, it's great because there's already a row of trees. Steve and I drove back there the other day. There's already a row of trees where once you're in full spring and summer, it's going to be hard to see a lot of that site. But there's going to be other areas that they don't have it. My only point is, and that's on the south side of our property. I'm not even talking about the east or the west. So trees berm's going to be built. It's immediate. I mean, part of a berm is you get immediate shielding. It will be seeded. Obviously, it's going to depend on how much moisture we get on how fast that grass. Well,
Okay,
the primary
folks,
focus.
we're trying to be respectful.
The primary focus here, again, the berm isn't even required by city or by county ordinance, okay? So this is, if anyone here has ever paid for a berm, you know that's not chump change to put in. So to cover the north elevation, which is the primary exposure level for the most immediate neighbors, I mean, the farther out we get, you know, we're going to try to be accommodating. So to directly answer your question, we don't have a landscaping plan right now that says every 10 feet you have to have this. It's got to be seeded and staked. We don't have that. But what I can commit is we will have a berm, we will seed it, and it will be landscaped. The species of trees, the spacing of the trees, all that, we don't have that at this time. Step one is to submit the zoning request and see where we get.
I got you. Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Those are the questions that I had. Does the board have any other questions specifically for Mr. Dalton? Okay. Does the board have any questions for our zoning director? I wouldn't mind hearing from Lindsay one more time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, board.
Lindsay, can you talk about M1 and indoor and outdoor storage? Because I think that's might be an issue here.
I can. The M1 zoning classification, it does state indoor storage. I did some research. I had a feeling that might come up. From 1975 to 2025, there's been 35 M1 zonings in Warren County, and not one has had a restriction for indoor storage. And I can tell you that the majority of the properties, including the new to be county yard, will have outdoor storage. And we had to rezone that site as well for the use that they would have. Dwayne Burkhart with the underground company, he's off of Dakota Street. He paved from Highway 65, 69 to his site. He has a lot of outdoor storage, 6 crane service. Britt Baker had that when he was over by Cumming. The Alfred Wicker, when he rezoned and did sandstone, it's now known as sandstone management up off of Highway 65, 69 and Highway 5. So the majority, and from 1980, which is our current ordinance that addressed M1, it hasn't really been addressed since. So from 1980 to 2025, there's been 32 rezonings from A1 to M1. So that's just kind of some information on that. I think, you know, the neighbors have brought up some good points. I think Mr. Jordison is trying to be a good neighbor. He's trying to put forth his best effort to remedy some of these concerns, but again, Mr. Dalton has addressed that. Do you have any more questions?
That's all I had for you, Lindsay. Does anyone on the board have questions for Lindsay?
That I do want to say that this is a first reading, and they can have second and third readings unless that is waived. So I just did want to bring that point up.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I will make, sure, you didn't speak round one, right, sir? All right, you got it.
I just want to say, I was born and raised down there.
Sir, can you come up to the microphone, please?
Come from
Yeah, and your address.
around there, and I was born and raised there. And all these people out here moved in there since I lived there. No more. They're not. They're new people, and well, she's lived there. Not long. She married into that. Anyway, all these people have bought properties down by me and around there, and they're all wonderful people. Do we want to, for one person, sacrifice all these beautiful people and all my friends? They all moved there since I've lived there, and I love them all. And probably nobody in here I don't know. And I just want to say, which would you rather have? The tax base they built is going to be way more taxes than this is going to bring in. And they're still going to be building more houses in there if we don't build anything there. So the tax money they've already put into the county, you look at it, it's more than what that plant's going to bring. That's all I want to say.
Thanks, sir. And with that, I'm going to make a motion to end our public hearing.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. We are out of public hearing. All right, board discussion.
I'll start. Sure. Want me to start? All right. My name seems to get said first a lot on the vote, so I would like to thank all of you for coming here this evening, all residents as well as Mr. Jorgensen and his representative. I apologize, I'll speak louder. You know what, they tell me that before every meeting and I still don't do it right. I think one of the things we all have to remember is once upon a time we were all someone's backyard. That sweet man just came up here and said we were all someone's backyard. And lots of people have proposed other locations. Unfortunately, Mr. Jorgensen doesn't own 40 acres by Martinsdale. He owns this 40 acres. And what we need to look at is if this is the right move for the county. I think all of us want cheaper property taxes. I'm pretty sure every single one of us ran on that. This is how we decrease property taxes, is through industrial and commercial development off of our interstates. You know, I understand that that is not going to be very favorable in this room, but I want to decrease the property taxes. I also want to explore methods such as a countywide EMS program. We can't do that if we don't have a tax base for it. We need the tax base in the rural to do it. Otherwise, we will continue to rest on the homeowners, on your residential property taxes to pay for everything we need in this county. So I'm excited. I think this could be a great opportunity to bring some immediate income into our county on taxable revenue. I was excited to hear the gentleman from Interstate 35 because they are going to win big, especially when changes are made to legislation mandating that you pay new teachers $50,000. We are all struggling with the repercussions of House File 718. And this is the way that we can make this up. I'm excited to know that you're going to employ 10 to 14 people. And from a city standpoint, I guess I'm a little surprised that St. Mary's and St. Charles would be opposed to this, because as a former mayor, these people are going to come and shop and eat in your community every single day. And well, I just heard somebody from St. Charles come and speak for their city, saying they have all these shops and restaurants that they want people to come and see. So my point is that these people need to eat somewhere, they will shop somewhere, and I think this is good for Warren County. And if we vote no, we are closing the doors to Warren County, and your taxes will continue to be on the residential side.
Okay.
I'm done.
This is board hold on, folks, this is board discussion time. Is there anyone else from the board who has thoughts on this?
Yeah, I got a few thoughts.
You bet.
I guess for me, I keep going back to the future land use plan or the comprehensive plan, but maybe not in the same, idea as everybody else. The plan was updated in 2024, and it hadn't been updated for 22 years. And in that 22 years, a lot has changed in this area. So I'm wondering, when we came up with this new land use plan, maybe everything that had gone on in this area wasn't considered. So I went out and, I looked, and there have been a lot of homes built in this area since 2022, and I'm not sure that was considered when we came up with the new plan. So I found at least there are 7 homes within 1,200 feet of this site. So this is less than a quarter mile. Of those houses, of those 7, 5 of them were built after 2002 in the land use plan. So 1641 G50 Highway was built in 2006. 1781 G50 Highway built in 2021 or 2022. As
1781 was built in 1909.
Okay.
Tom will remember that.
16107 20th Avenue built in 2014, 2170 G50 Highway 2011, 2234 G50 Highway 2010. And then there's 2 additional houses, one built in 1998 and one built in 2000. And those are the 7 homes, all within, like I said, less than a quarter mile of this particular parcel. So I don't know if any of that information was considered when we developed the new land use plan, and maybe part of the problem is the land use plan. I don't know what input people were given in that land use plan or what they looked at when they came up, but there wasn't any changes made. The 2002 to 2004 is basically pretty much the same. I do believe that the plant here, and I do struggle with it because it is a great thing for Warren County, and we do want to increase our tax base. But then at the same time, I think that the people have their input. You've all showed up to the meeting tonight, and a lot more people actually showed up at the last meeting, and you voiced your concern. And I don't think this is an issue where I think the people who are in opposition of this concrete plant, for one, they also are aware of the financial impact, and they know what they're in opposition of. And I don't think that in talking to many of you and many of the people I've talked to, I don't think there's a misunderstanding about what this particular plant is and isn't. I think you guys are the people, and I feel like you have a good handle on what it is that you're in opposition of. I don't think it's just a misunderstanding. So, you guys have made your voices, known, and it's, kind of overwhelming in my eyes that the number of people who've come out in opposition to this. And that's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I have had the absolute pleasure of having a couple beers with old Tom Brommel back there. So my wife is Stacy Inman. I grew up down by New Virginia, but you guys probably all know the Inmans. So I know exactly what you're going through, and I know what you're feeling, and I don't think there's much shopping and eating in St. Mary's when there's Northside Tap in St. Mary's, and there's a come and go Casey's over in St. Charles.
Local option sales tax is split countywide, just keep that in mind.
I actually had the pleasure of talking to Patrick there at Northside Tap, and he had no interest in this. None of the St. Mary's people do. I've talked to a couple realtors that have revealed their concerns for the properties around this neck of the woods being affected by this facility. So I guess I just really don't think you need to, well, we can base this vote off of emotion, and there's a lot of emotion in the room tonight, but I think the residents have some very valid concerns, and I think we'll have to figure that out as we go.
When looking at all aspects of the zoning request, I asked myself one question. Is this following the law and bringing us closer to resolution of increasing commercial business to lower residential property taxes and keeping within the integrity of the area? I'm appreciative of businesses, and especially the gentleman that got up and spoke about I-35. That is a legitimate concern when you're the fourth lowest, is that fourth highest, sorry, in taxes in Iowa. So your tax base is next to nil, and it's only the residential that is fueling your school district. I live also in a very high, 62% of my taxes goes to school district. And about 20% of your entire tax bill goes to the county. And although we boast very low taxes in the county, that's your 20% of your property taxes, schools really take a big chunk of that. Now, I'm not going to dismiss any of your concerns because I, too, have talked to a lot of you personally and gotten to know you very well throughout. To me, this has been more of almost a year coming. I was on the board when the land use passed, and I was a no vote because it is almost identical to the 2002 land use plan. It didn't take into consideration each individual area within Warren County, and this being a very unique area off of 35. To me, this is a residential area. Is there M1? Yes. But do we need more M1 in this area? I say no. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give you my thoughts. Open book. This is not an easy job. And I knew that signing up for it because I was a supervisor here before. And somehow I'm back for 2 years. I hear you. I get it. This is a balancing act too, though. So, you know, we have competing and conflicting interests in Warren County. There are people that don't want the county to grow. There are people that would like it to grow. But at the end of the day, everything that we do, whether that's in the sheriff's department, in the engineer's department, the county attorney's office, our board expanded from 3 to 5, as you can see, all of these things cost money. That's it. It costs money, and that money has to come from somewhere. Someone pointed out earlier that each of us collectively represent a little more than 10,000 people. So there's a lot of interest in the county to try to generate tax revenue, right? Because everyone wants a pay raise, whether that's a 2.5% COLA raise or the cost of rock increases, or we have a landslide, or we have whatever, or a bridge breaks down. Everything costs money, and it comes from the taxpayers. I'm not saying I like the way that the state of Iowa sets up our tax code and that these things and the schools are funded predominantly with property taxes, but that is where they come from. I also will tell you that just getting off the campaign trail in November, you can't imagine how few people in this county raise their hand when you ask them, would you like to pay more property taxes? That's not a 55-45 issue. That's a 99-1 issue. There's a few people that are like, well, yeah, I'd like to contribute a little bit more to have some additional services. So considering that makes these difficult. I will also, I'm not going to criticize predecessors, but I understand that this can's been kicked down the road a little bit, and it kind of got kicked into our lap as a new board. So we don't have, maybe some of us, quite the history with this rezoning application. But I got to tell you this, I feel for the residents. I understand that this is not something that you want there, and I balance that with the overarching thought of, do we want M1 and industrial development in rural Warren County? And that question is either yes or it's no. If it's yes, the question is where. If it's no, then folks have to understand that it will be you, the homeowners, who burden and shoulder the property taxes that increase when your valuation increases and when the school, and if you, I guess for rural, you're not in a city, but when the county needs additional resources, it's you who burden, who shoulder that. So do I think the project is a very good project? Absolutely. I think that I think Lindsay said there was 32 rezonings since 1980. I would bet at least 30 of them would absolutely trade places and have a Mr. Jorgensen do that M1 project where they're at. Because I think that his history speaks for itself. I think that they've went above and beyond to try to mitigate as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, I think he'd be a good neighbor. Now, do you think he's a good neighbor? No, you don't want any new neighbor there, and I get that. But when I look at where, if we decide as a county that this is something that we want to grow and broaden the tax base, which I think most people do, and if it wasn't right here, I think most of you would probably say, yeah, broadening the tax base, reducing taxes, that sounds like a good idea. If that's where we're at, and not just in the room, but in the 50,000 people that we collectively represent, then you have to ask yourself, where should something like that go? And I would tell you without a doubt that you're not going to put that on 160 acres, 3 miles down a gravel road by Milo or Lacona, because there's no infrastructure there. It wouldn't fit. It would be spot zoning. So I look at the land use plan, and it circles M1 here. And I think that you would want industrial and commercial off of the interstate, right? Well, that's what's happening at the Cumming interstate exit, and that's what's happening at other ones. I think that's where the people are going to logically say, that's where it fits, because you're going to destroy roads less, you're going to generate tax revenue. So, I mean, is the spot the correct spot? I don't know. I mean, I suppose you could move one lot over, and it could be there already. So, you know, for these reasons, like I would be in support of it for a round one reading. I get that that's not the sentiment in the room. I also get that I represent the entirety of the county. And I think that from my perspective, from what I'm hearing from people, clearly not here today, is that people want industrial and they want a broadening of the tax base. Is this good economic development? Are those good paying jobs? My guess is they're probably paying $50,000 to $75,000. There's a lot of tax benefit from that. Do I want this project in the county? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd be in support.
Are you looking for a motion?
I would.
I will make a motion to approve Stephen Jorgensen's rezoning from A1 to M1.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second Not waiving second and third. Yeah, she didn't waive it, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't put that in there. With the waiving of second and third reading. I apologize, I missed that you said that.
I'm not going to second that. Can you
Okay,
can you
so
remake
want
the
me to do
motion
it the
with a second
original
and
way?
third?
Okay,
Yep.
so I will make a motion to approve Stephen Jorgensen's rezoning request from A1 to M1 as it.
That works. I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Aye.
No.
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 Aye. The motion fails.
There's two more readings, people. There's two more readings.
If it failed, there's actually not.
There's not, yeah, because it failed. So there will be no more readings.
Oh, is that
Okay.
so?
Number 6.
Okay.
Receive and
Excuse me, there will be no more readings. I guess it failed. Can't believe it.
We'll wait a moment and let the room clear. 6 minutes, 5 minutes.
Is it on? We really appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm going to be 93 next month, and I came to this meeting.
Well, you look great for being 93 next month.
And we really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You did a good job.
I know, I don't either.
I'm sorry.
I know. It's not easy. This like sucks. I don't want.
Good to see you.
Oh, I wanted to say something about the kids.
Okay, let's convene. Let's reconvene the meeting. We're on number 6. Yep.
I can probably unplug those.
Right here in Indian Lake, my backyard. I'll take it. Thank you.
Come up to Norwalk. We'd love you.
Hey, we'll find a spot at Carlisle too. Cheapest school taxes in the county.
All right, let's reconvene the meeting. We're on number 6. Receive and file reports. We have one report from the Humane Society. I make a motion to receive and file the Humane Society report.
I'll make a second.
You forgot the VA maintenance.
Okay. Let's go back to number 5. VA Maintenance of Graves Grant Discussion.
Yep, that would be me. Okay. At the last board meeting, a question came up about payment of the maintenance of veterans' graves paid to the Warren County Veterans Affairs Office. The County Veterans Affairs and the Board of Supervisors has used outdated information in the past years from 2011 as the number of buried veterans in Warren County. Not only has that number tripled, the $2.50 per grave for maintenance is no longer in Iowa code. To facilitate communication between the county VA office and townships, the only thing required of townships is to email the VA office with one thing: the number of veterans buried at all of their cemeteries within their township. The new amount set aside is almost double what we mailed out last year. Further questions, look for an email from the Warren County Veterans Affairs or call the Veterans Affairs office.
Close that door. Ask them to empty the hallway, please.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Mary Lee.
That did help. That's it. Unless anybody has any questions on that.
Sure, come on up so we can hear you.
I just have a question about how we're going to verify, because if the trustees are just sending an email, do they have to send any sort of documentation, or does Joel have something set up maybe?
Yep. They should have on file a DD 214 that proved that that was a veteran buried in that grave. And they only need verification from 2011 on.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So,
Thank you so much.
yes.
Any action needed on it today?
Nope.
Okay, great. Number 6, receive and file reports. We have a report from the Humane Society. I'll make a motion to receive and file the Humane Society report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Number 7, supervisors report. If anyone would like to present, you're certainly welcome to.
Okay.
All I have is on February 11th at 5:30 PM in the EOC at the Justice Center is an EMA budget hearing.
Great. And February, I think it is 12th now, at 6 PM, there will be a 911 meeting for budget. I answered calls and emails for zoning issues and roads and complaints. Went out with the engineer to look at projects, building and roads. Attended Aging Resources Board of Directors meeting. Attended 2 Board of Supervisor work sessions and a closed session. The Exploratory EMS Committee will meet next week. On February 8th, on behalf of Carlisle Chamber, they are holding a legislative coffee at the Carlisle City Council meeting chambers from 10 to 11. To the last board meeting and during public comment by Amy Duncan concerning the scheduling of our swearing in, not one member of this board had anything to do with the scheduling other than agreeing to that time and date. Otter Township is in need of township trustees. Due to some vacancies, call any Board of Supervisor member. And that is my report.
All right, thank you, Crystal. Travis, you have anything?
I'm good.
Okay, real brief. Had a meeting at the MPO regarding a proposal to revisit Interstate 435. Did some follow-up correspondence with both a senator in the legislature as well as a House rep. Went up to Ankeny with zoning and legal for an MSA meeting. Did a trip with the engineer, new engineer, in my neck of the woods and a little south of Norwalk on an issue and have been working with them. Responded to calls and emails. Had the meetings that we had. Spoke with IT and a couple of the department heads getting ready for budget time. That will be my report. Number 8, public input. Is there any comment from the public, either online or here in the room? If so, comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual, and the board will not take any action on those comments due to the requirements of the open meetings law, but may do so in the future. And we frequently do. We do. We hear you. We think about it. And sometimes those things come back on a work session and then maybe make their way on the agenda. But seeing none, and it's 8:41, we will move right along. Our next meeting is February 4, 2025 at 9:30 in the morning. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn in a second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye, we're adjourned. Thanks for your time, all.
I'm sorry to run out. I gotta go to city council now. I'm supposed to pretend like I don't know this big surprise. My whole mayor's youth council is there. They want to give me an award, and I'm like, oh, go.